Access to the Monte Zone will be granted shortly. Please stand by.
It's Friday. It's 8 o'clock. It's the Monte Zone.
Yay! Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop. Good evening, everybody. Yes, the Monte Zone is back for July. People thought it would be another 6 months before we do another one. But no!
No, we are here.
We've surprised everyone. And, we're back. And we're not talking about Bigfoots or UFOs this evening. We're taking a different road.
Yeah, a different path.
A different
path. But it's still definitely within, as I keep saying to you, it's still definitely within the mysterious, unsolved, thought-provoking. So it definitely fits within that category of what we do here on the Vault, I believe.
Yeah.
Definitely, I hope to introduce that this evening. Introduce a subject that might be new to some people and play with your mind.
The mysteries of the unexplained.
Twist your melon, man.
Yeah. We are going west this evening to the Old West. Go west, where the sky is blue. No, we are going to the Old West. We're going back to the Old West and Billy the Kid, the 1800s. And it's a bit of a passion of yours, isn't it? It's been ruminating in your brain box for quite a few years now.
It's a huge passion of mine. It's sort of actually shaped quite a lot of my choices in life, for sure. And when I say that, not the subject solely of Billy the Kid, but my interest and passion in the South US, and the Old West and those states. I obviously lived in Arizona, and my interest in Native American history as well as the frontier history. And so this is something that I've been reading up on for many a decade, and this particular subject has been one of definitely at the top, and I'll come to that in a little bit. But we're going to do some news first. But before we get into that, don't forget to like the stream. Evening to so far in chat, we've got Mickey and we've got Sean. Evening, Sean. Evening to Smiler. And so if you are with us and watching, please say hi in chat and let us know you're here.
Yeah.
And don't forget to like the stream.
I'm sorry, Sean, but according to my figures, we're at 548 now. We lost another one today, so we're going in the wrong direction, buddy. Unfortunately, yeah. Sucks.
So we need 2 now tonight.
We need 2. Yeah, come on, Monte Zone. You can do
Evening, Mazza.
Good evening, Maz. Yeah, Mickey's not heard of Billy the Kid. Amazingly well, maybe you haven't. It's he was a big deal back in the day. He's kind of had a legendary status, but a lot of people haven't heard of him. So if you haven't, maybe G's going to be able to, give you some interesting insight into this historical character this evening. We might be an educational Monte Zone this evening rather than
well, definitely, because if you have remotely heard of Billy the Kid, you've probably heard of it more so through popular culture and movies or TV, and he's one of those iconic figures that's had a lot of bad misrepresentation based on the actual facts and the actual history, and also it's I can't remember what I was going to say, but it's going to educate a lot of people because there's a lot of misconceptions about the man, about the history. But it's because it came from a time when things weren't recorded or documented as they are today. And that's what I was going to get to. That I've just remembered. That's what I was going to say, is that it's more difficult to go back and look at the evidence from that time period in that particular location, just because of how wild and remote it was.
I will say I've got my Friday night wine this evening. It is a Dino Italian Blush. Do you recognise that, G?
Yes, I do recognise that. That's my bottle of wine.
This is G's bottle of wine. He came round last weekend for a few drinks and brought a bottle of wine with him. And it's the only bottle of wine I now have in the house. So I'm drinking it. So, yes.
Well, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's nice. I took actually some careful time to pick a one that I thought I would like. So
it's nice. Actually, it's very nice. But yes, so my wine this evening is courtesy of the Underground Paradox. So thanks. It's really,
I'm glad I can feed your thirst.
Mickey's going to grab a beer for the journey back in time.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Grab a beer, grab a drink, sit back, and hopefully this is going to be interesting in many, many ways. If I can achieve anything from tonight's episode, it's just that maybe some of you might go and look into this subject matter in a little bit more in depth and stuff. So, should we get to the news?
Yeah, let's get to the news. Let's go for my news first. Ready? This is what I'm bringing to the table this month. I always come with a load of interesting facts for the news, and today I've got nothing. No,
he's got nothing.
Nothing for you. No, there hasn't been another SpaceX test since it's test 4, so I can't tell you about that because we covered that last time out.
I'm really surprised actually that you've not come to the table with something James Webb. But I thought I came across something James Webb, a little bit of an update on. I think last time we did a Monte Zone, you brought something to the table about James.
Yeah.
Telescope.
They were using like the spectral analysis side of things to peer through the atmosphere of a planet, and they could see things like hydrocarbons in the atmosphere, because as the light from the star behind it goes through the atmosphere, it cuts out certain wavelengths of light, and they can tell the chemical composition of the atmosphere. And they see things that are the markers that point to the things, the sort of the chemicals that can create life. A bit like they see that on Titan, the moon that orbits around Saturn. So anyway, it's really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I've got to find somewhere else to put my iPad so I can see chat, but also still get to my mouse. The update that I thought I saw, because there was news back along that they were finding certain elements, in the atmosphere and things like, there was a particular type of, gas component that only comes off this particular type of plankton, or they found the plankton, or I saw this video. This was about a week ago. I saw this video where they were talking to one of the young professors on the James Webb Telescope project, and he was saying that with this latest planet that they found, they're still analyzing all of the data until they reveal their full results and commit to anything. But he was saying that it's looking 50-50 that they're going to prove that this planet has got life.
I'll take those odds.
Yeah, well, those odds are like, the person who's interviewing was like, really? Seriously? I didn't expect you to say 50-50. Like 50-50 is really high. That's like, it's, besides like, so it was really interesting to hear. Now, when we talk about discovering life on another planet, we're not talking about, maybe intelligent life, but, the presence of some sort of life, whether that be microbial or whatever. It's still exciting. Just try and see what they're saying in chat. I was going to ask, I forgot to ask you off air if you keep a close eye on chat as well.
I will keep a close eye. Don't you worry. If anything comes up in chat, I will bring your attention to it.
Well, evening, Kevin. Nice to see you.
Maz thinks you're using a filter because you look about 21 on Maz's television. But then I don't know if she's got a new TV, because I think her TV was pretty janky last time I saw it. I don't know. Good evening, Kevin. Good evening.
I'm not aware that I'm using a filter. There might be one that's embedded into the software that I use for my phone. It's called IV Cam, so there might be a natural filter, but I certainly haven't done anything special. I do have my light directly on me, so maybe that's giving me a bit of a glow. I don't know. G-Star's a very youthful fellow.
You might be able to see how youthful later on in this episode, because we might have some photos to show you. So,
that's going to be fun.
Stay tuned for some embarrassing photos later on.
Yeah. So anyway, my first bit of news, it's really local, actually. Oh. It comes from Devon. And you said we're not talking about aliens and we're not talking about Bigfoot this evening. First one, straight out of the bat, Bigfoot print found in Devon. Right. The picture is ready to share, Monte. It's on the screen.
Wow.
Yeah, got it up.
Yeah.
So I'll read you the story. Hold on. A shocked group of people co-steering stumbled upon a mysterious footprint, which they think could belong to Bigfoot. The large footprint was found near Maidencoombe Coast Path today on Saturday, March the 2nd, with some questioning who it belongs to. The large print was found by a group of people with rock-solid co-steering. Obviously, that's the group, I guess, in Torquay. And they came across this stumbling, perplexing sight. They said that although the path was muddy, these large footprints emerged from the nearby woods at Watcombe. Further comments were a member of the group, the footprints came from the woods. They followed the coastal path for roughly 20 meters before it veered off into the woodland. The group who discovered the print say they were all weirded out. And that comes from Devon Live.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. But, you know, it's it'd be good to have what's his face look at that.
Yeah.
Wonder if anybody took a past Dr. Meldrew. Be good for him to see if it's got the heel that he always looks for.
It looks a bit wrong to me.
Yeah.
Like it's been chiseled out around the edges rather than like, you know?
Well, do you know what I think it is? Having another look at it this evening, I think it was somebody's footprint, and then a dog has then also come along and walked in the exact same spot as them, and the dog has then trodden on the end of the footprint where the human toes would be.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So because, you know, it looks too clory, you know, because it almost kind of looks like bare toes at the end, but I think it could just be a dog's print that's just gone on top of.
It looks raised up as well. It's kind of weird. It doesn't look like a depression in the normal sense. I don't know if my brain's just not like looking at it right.
You're not seeing the footprint?
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to work out. Yeah. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, but anyway, I thought I would share that one with you guys because it was really local to us as well. So, and it happened really recently. That was pictured in March of this year.
Kevin says send it to Oregon the Doctor. Yeah, something about the toes now don't look quite right to me, Kevin. But
no,
yeah.
I was gonna say it doesn't actually look right for a big footprint anyway. You know, some of the more credible ones definitely have certain features to them, and the toes are quite spread out. So, oh, what happened there?
Well, we lost you for a minute. You're back.
Thank God. Yeah, I think I've got a dodgy cable going into my camera here. Oopsie. Fingers crossed, no more problems. Pray to the IT gods. I can't be dealing with that and everything else I've got to deal with this evening. Right, so my next bit of news, it's a bit of a continuity thing, actually, just in relation to some G-Star vaults that I've done in the past. As Monte was saying, I was with him last weekend and we were having a bit of a catch-up and a drink. And I was telling him a funny story that recently, because things are starting to settle down for me and I've now finished my album, I'm starting to think about YouTube again and what I'm going to be doing with that. So I haven't sort of fully made up my mind. So I was watching back on some old stuff recently, which I haven't done in ages. And I was watching I put on the G-Star Vault playlist. And I was telling Monte that I came across an episode that honestly, even now, after watching it again, I don't recall making it. And so when I was watching it, it was kind of like I was a viewer watching this episode and I didn't even know what was going to come up next. And I was
you thought, this guy's pretty good. He knows what he's talking about.
However, although I do not remember like that particular episode, it is part of a sort of story arc that I did in G-Star Vault, which I do remember the bulk of that. And that was, if you recall, I had done quite a few videos on this phenomena that had been forming around the world of rectangular sightings of UAPs and UFOs.
Oh, yeah.
And I've done a few videos where I've been showing some continuity between photos taken in different locations around the world. And funny enough, there's a couple of new ones that have come up. This first one that I'm going to share, let me try and recall where it was from. Oh yeah, that's it. So, and it's kind of weird. Let me I need to share my screen. Ready to share, Monty.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is from Florida, and was taken recently. And what sort of throws me off is because when you think of Florida, you think of blue skies, right? And this is like quite an overcast grey sky. But yeah, good picture in terms of the fact that it's got the kind of street, what I'm assuming is a street lamp in the picture, so gives a little bit of scaling, but not really enough considering that all the rest of what's in the photo is sky, so it's really hard to make a size sort of thing. But it was interesting that this is actually a video. I don't have the video because it's a TikTok, not a TikTok, an Instagram.
I know what it is.
Have you seen it? Have you?
No.
Have you seen the video?
Oh, not. I don't know if I've seen this video.
Yeah, I just took a still from the video, but yeah, go on. Say what you think it is.
It's Zod arriving from the Phantom Zone. It's going to flip out, and he's going to be like that. Ah!
Yeah, it does look like that. I mean, I would like to look into this a little bit more, and I haven't looked into this. I just quickly. This is actually, as I said, a still from a video that I just quickly screen grabbed. But yeah, it was interesting in terms of the fact that it's rectangular. One thing that I will tell you about the video that I can recall was that the object wasn't moving particularly fast. So that does instantly raise some possibilities that it's something that's just caught on the wind. But there was some comments within this that went along with this video saying that it was a really still day that day, so it's not something that's caught on a gust of wind, but you never know. But it was just interesting. And then funny enough, attached to that same sort of post where there's that video, I'll just remove that one a minute, there's another.
I think the
picture.
Phantom Zone, Wookiee thinks it's the time portal from the Time Bandits. That's another good option. Yeah.
And then there's this one, which, as I said, is attached to the same post. Or I can't recall if somebody put it in comments.
Oh no!
But this is in Australia.
That looks more like the TARDIS.
Well, it looks actually a hell of a lot like. Now, this is the one where, all joking aside, there's a one piece of photography that was taken in Italy in 1976 by a fighter pilot in the Italian army. And this picture was originally in black and white, but it's been scaled up to color. And it's a really seriously impressive picture. Because again, it's one of those ones that stood up to some scrutiny and analysis. And the object in this looks very, very similar to like the object in that, and could be. But yeah, it's interesting that these both popped up at the same time, both rectangular. And then weirdly, I was telling you that like about an hour before the show, I came across this video related to tonight's subject. But also I then came across a video where it was, I don't know what the show's called. Is it Loose Women that plays on daytime?
Yeah,
UK
on
TV.
Yeah.
And they had Robbie Williams guesting on it. And he was talking about a UAP that he saw 19 years ago in Beverly Hills. And he was saying about how he was sober, he wasn't drunk or on drugs. But it's funny, his description of that was, again, rectangular and very similar to. So it was like funny, I was watching this and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to talk about that this evening. But yeah, so check that video out. I think it's on YouTube. Robbie Williams on Loose Women talking about aliens. But yeah.
Mickey reckons it's Bill and Ted in their telephone box. If it's Australia, maybe they're heading to get Hugh Jackman for some kind of history report. Kevin
Could be.
reckons maybe a flying brick, but Kevin says that Australia is a UFO hotspot. It's funny because when I think of UFOs, I don't think of Australia for some reason.
No, he's correct. But then again, I guess there's a lot of places that have similar conditions that are usually universally hotspots. So where we're talking about this evening, because we are going to New Mexico this evening, and obviously the most famous of all alien incidents happened in Roswell of New Mexico. But yeah, certainly in locations where it's very underpopulated by humans, very wilderness, big expanses of space. So the Midwest is a hotspot, Australia is a hotspot, a lot of Russia is a hotspot, China, but we don't get as much information out of China because of their internet restrictions and prohibitions and stuff. But yeah, apparently China's a hotspot as well.
My screen moved about. I don't know why that happened, but it did. So I've corrected it. Sorry about that. I wonder. Oh, I know why. Yes, I had the private chat window open, and that moves the screen. And then I closed it, and that put the screen all out of whack. Sorry about that. Thank you, Maz, though, for letting me know. Thank you for being on. Yeah.
Kevin says there's a huge secret US base in the heart of Australia. I've not heard about that one, Kevin, so that would be interesting to look into.
Yes, it's at the north. It's at the north. It's in the middle. It's just north of Alice Springs. In fact, Alice Springs is like if you go to like the cafes in Alice Springs in the center of Australia, it's full of like American secret worker people that won't talk about what they do. So there you go.
Okay, I'm just opening. Oh, there we go.
I actually watched. There's a guy. What's he called? There's a YouTuber, an Australian YouTuber who he makes YouTubes about government corruption and things. Geordie. Something Geordie. And him and this other guy decided they were just going to see if they could just walk into it because it's out in the middle of nowhere and it doesn't have much of because it's so huge, it doesn't have much of a fence around it. So they thought, what happened if they just put backpacks on and just one, but they didn't get anywhere close. Yeah, no, not Geordie LaForge. Sean. No, but it's secret spy stuff they do there. Yeah, like listening. It's like a listening outpost. They're watching China.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to definitely look into that. I'm getting educated now because
just look. If you bring up, should I do it? Look, you know what I'm like. I can't help myself. Right, where are we? Let me just. Sorry, a bit of a sidetrack from.
That's fine. That's awesome. Yeah. That's what we want from our audience.
There's Australia. Alice Springs is right in the middle of nowhere. There's Alice Springs. And it's
Wookie says that Alice Springs, the 80s Mad Max movies were filmed around there.
Yeah. And it's just north of Alice Springs somewhere. It's quite easy to spot. But
evening, by the way, Wookie. So
yeah, evening, Wookie. I can't.
Australia's Area 51.
It is. I'll have to find it later and
okay.
And
if you bring it up,
bring it back up. But it is. Yeah, it's north of Alice Springs somewhere, but it's huge.
I guess you can't type into the Google map,
secret
Australia's Area 51.
No.
No.
Hi, Orky. Yeah. It is on Google Maps. You can see it. It's like an Air Force Base type thing, and it's got loads of antennae and stuff. But I can't. Is it there? No, it's not there. Anyway, well, I'll find it later because we got Old West things to talk about.
Yeah. So that was pretty much. There was something else that I was going to share on the news, but you know what? If there's time later, I'll share it. But it's not the best thing, so I'll leave it to another time, I think. Yeah. So before I get into the main part of this evening's show, I've got a favor to ask from you guys, and that is that I want everyone this evening to play the part of like a jury. And at the end of the show, partway through the show, I'll tell you what you're jurying on. So you need to listen to all the information. You need to listen to all the data as we go through this evening's show. And as we get partway through this evening's show, I'll kind of tell you what it is that you guys are going to be voting on as a jury. Does that sound cool, Monte?
That sounds very cool.
Cool.
No, I'll tell you where I went wrong. It's just south of Alice Springs.
Secret base.
Not north of Alice Springs. Yeah. There it is. So, there's Alice Springs. There's Alice Springs. And if you look southwest of Alice Springs, you got White Gums. And then here, there's this place. And there's these giant, huge balls. They're like Death Stars in the desert. Like, they're huge. Yeah.
Is there like an airstrip near
nope.
it?
No.
So how do people get out there?
They had lots and lots of trucks. You see these like convoys of like Black Army trucks going in and out of the place. But yeah, if you go to Alice Springs, you'll find a lot of the people there are actually American. So anyway, there you go.
Cool.
I found it eventually. But
Good
yeah,
stuff.
southwest of Alice Springs. Check it out.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, this evening's subject comes from a real interest of mine, a passion that I've had for. I sort of got into the Old West really just around the time that I was hitting 15. And when I found out that I was going to be an exchange student and I was going to be staying with a host family in, Arizona, I was like, whoa, made up, amazing. This is what I want. And then since then, I had some really great experiences over there and learned a lot, both about, the history from, what we would call a kind of settlers history. And then also I learned a lot about the Aboriginal history and Native Americans, but when I was over there, I was really lucky. I had the opportunity to go to the Phoenix City Library quite a lot. I spend like 4 hours, like just sitting there reading about different things to do with the Old West, a lot about Billy the Kid. Whilst I was in the States, my host family took me to this location that's just on the outskirts of Phoenix called Rawhide, which is this location where they do like big country and Western concerts there. But also there's like a town that's made up to be like an Old West town. And there's restaurants and bars and shops and stuff in there. And they also do this thing. And I had this photograph taken, which is very relevant for this evening's topic of the show. If you wouldn't mind sharing the photo, Monte. We'll be talking about it later, but obviously tonight's subject is all about Billy the Kid. And there is one famous photo that is the only photo currently that has been fully 100% authenticated. And this is my best impression at trying to impersonate that tintype.
One sec. Look at the little baby.
Yep. Now I got something really wrong here because I actually put the rifle in my left hand, and we'll be talking about it later. But in the actual tintype of Billy the Kid, at first it was thought that it was in his left hand, but the process of making a tintype means that it switches around the image. So for a lot of years, that's what caused this theory of being left-handed. But it should have actually been in my right hand. but my image isn't flipped because it's done with modern photography. This was taken back in.
Can't I just flip it?
Yeah, it was taken back in 1991. So this is me at the tender age of 16 and doing my best impression of the famous tintype of Billy the Kid. But my passion when I returned to the UK continued to grow. In university, I did Native American Studies as a minor for my bachelor's. So there's a lot of stuff that has really fueled the interest in the subject matter. And I tried to impress that on some of my best friends and tried to get them really into liking stuff about the Old West. And funny enough, we've got a picture of myself and Monte doing a similar thing. So here's one to share.
Hang on a sec.
So, and I think this picture, I'm not too sure. It was either somewhere between 1994 and 1996. Probably, yeah? Does that sound about right?
Yes, 90. Yeah, maybe 95, actually. Yeah, in the middle of that era, yeah.
So we would have been about 24, 25 year?
About 20, 21, yeah.
Ah. Yeah, so you've got... was that... If I recall, they were your white jeans that you were wearing, right?
They were, yeah. Yeah, that was just...
And I think that's why we decided to go white.
Yeah, because I was wearing white jeans.
Yeah. I think I was wearing white jeans as well, or some light sort of denim, but I just ended up in dark. But I don't know if you can...
I wasn't too keen about that string around my leg. I was like, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, but I think we decided to have the photo taken outside, didn't we? It's not a standard thing that they do.
No, yeah, it was in this like shop like thing, wasn't it? And they had like curtains, and you know, and we said, well, can we just have it outside? And it was in Cornwall.
Yeah,
I think it was in Cornwall, wasn't it? It was in Cornwall.
So yeah, so you can see that it's been a lifelong interest of mine, and not just the subject of Billy the Kid, but certainly that has infused me. And what happened recently is, when I say recently, I mean in the last few years, around late 2019 to 2000, I had a spinal operation and I was bedridden for about 3 months roughly. And during that time, I read this book. I can bring a picture of it up on the screen, actually. 2 secs.
Maz asked about the green squares at the top right corner of the US base. That's actually like reservoirs, like water reservoirs. Yeah, just to address that one. Well, that's a good question, Kevin.
Pictures ready to share. Yeah, so this is the book that I read, and I just couldn't put it down, and it's really sort of changed my take on everything regarding the history of Billy the Kid, and really fueled over the last 4 or 5 years me looking into things in a lot more detail, and not just some of the theories that have been presented and certainly are hugely covered in this book, but actually just some of the back history and how, because of things are evolving, it's very similar to the Patterson and Gimlin footage, because technology is getting us to a place where we can analyze it even better. And it's very similar with the Billy the Kid in terms of photos that keep cropping up that lend more to them being able to make more analysis, more documents that they're able to find. So it's always changing, but this book is a really, I would recommend this book to anybody, especially after this episode. If you're interested in the subject that I'm going to present this evening, this is definitely a book for you guys to read. So anyway, his
gun was in his left hand in that picture. Sorry.
Yeah, well, it is in some depictions of it because it's still, it's
because they swap it.
Yeah, yeah. But we'll be talking about, as I say, the photo a little bit later. Just thinking, what's the Wild West town you went to? No, it's not. The Tombstone is a place, and Tombstone is a location that's in Arizona. But the park is a completely different thing. It's just on the outskirts of Phoenix. It's like basically a theme park for entertainment purposes. But yeah.
Yes, Kelly. Supposedly Pat Garrett killed Billy the Kid, but we'll be discussing that. Supposedly, allegedly, some might say. I don't know, but yeah, we'll be going into discussing. Whether that's the case or not.
So let me start by giving a bit of I've given you an overview of why I'm so interested in this subject, and I wanted to bring it to the table. I asked Monte about it last week because I do think that there's a big section now where there's a lot of mystery, a lot of unsolved stuff, and definitely different angles of thoughts. Now, I'm about to give you a bit of an overview of Billy the Kid for those of you that don't know all of the detail. And the overview that I'm going to give you now is the status quo history. And when I say status quo history, it's a word that you're going to hear a lot throughout any research that you do into Billy the Kid, because not only there's a subject that I'm going to present this evening, which brings a different take into the whole thing, which certain historians are starting to get behind and agree with. But even with the history of Billy the Kid, before all of that, there's a lot of details that different historians argue about, because the documentation again and the records from that time period in that location were made things so challenging in terms of recording history that a lot of details have been lost along the way. But the painstaking work of researchers, authors over the last sort of 100 years has kind of made a bit of a difference to that. So, but this is the status quo history from historians about Billy the Kid. William H. Bolling, alias Billy the Kid, is probably the most misunderstood historical figure of the Old West. He is not the cold-blooded killer nor the robber of trains or banks as depicted in dime novels of the time. Instead, he was a cattle hustler, he was a poker player, and an extremely skilled and passionate gunfighter who ended up caught in a feud between two factions in the Lincoln County War in New Mexico. So this is where I wanted you, Monty, to go to New Mexico on Google Maps and start showing the guys whereabouts in the world where they can find New Mexico. Obviously, most people will probably know it's the US, but where in the US?
Let's go there.
Billy the Kid's real name was William Henry McCarty. And when and where he was born, or who or what happened to his father, is not fully known. It's estimated that he was born around 1860 to 61, possibly in New York. History first traces the kid as a youngster in Indiana in the late 1860s, and then in Wichita, Kansas in 1870. His mother, Catherine McCarty, was a widow and a single mother, and he had a younger brother named Joseph. By 1871, Catherine was diagnosed with tuberculosis and was told to move to a climate that was warmer and drier. On March 1st of 1873 in Santa Fe in New Mexico, Catherine McCarty married a man named William Antrim. Since there were now two Billys in the household, the kid's mother referred to him as his middle name, so he was now Henry McCarty Antrim. The family then moved to Silver City in Grant County, located in southern New Mexico, and Catherine was suffering from consumption and her health began to deteriorate rapidly. And then on September the 16th, 1874, the kid's mother died. Antrim, who was the stepfather, didn't want to be burdened with the two small boys, so he separated them and placed them into foster homes and left Silver City for Arizona. The kid now had to earn his own keep, so he was put to work washing dishes and waiting on tables in a restaurant. After a year of no parental guidance and looking out for himself, the kid quickly fell in with the wrong crowd. One of his troublemaking buddies, Sombrero Jack, stole some laundry from a Chinese laundry cleaner and told the kid to hide the bundle. The kid got caught and then was arrested. The county sheriff decided to keep him locked up for a couple of days just to scare him, but the kid escaped and ran away. The kid at this point was obviously in fear of the fact that he was now an outlaw and the sheriff was after him, when really probably nothing would have happened. It was just some laundry. The kid fled to one of his foster families, and they put him on a stagecoach to Clifton, Arizona, where his stepfather was living, William Antrim. But when he found his stepfather, his stepfather didn't want him and told the kid to leave. All alone in a strange desert, the kid wandered from one ranch to another to find work. For the next 2 years, the kid tramped around as a ranch hand and gambler. Apparently, history tells us that he was a very good poker player and he made a good living out of doing a lot of poker games. He then met up with a horse thief named John Mackey, who taught him the tricks of the trade, and the two became partners. But after some close calls, arrest, and escaping from custody, the kid decided it was wiser to give up on his new occupation. He returned some stolen horses to the army to clear himself and got to work as a ranch hand. So one day, while at a saloon in Camp Grant, Arizona, the kid was about 16 at the time. He got into a serious trouble. He got into an argument with a bully named Frank Windy Cahill, who had picked on him numerous times before. After some name calling, Cahill rushed the kid and slammed him to the ground. He then jumped on top of him and proceeded to slap him in the face. The kid worked his hand free with his revolver and fired it at Cahill's gut. When Cahill fell over, the kid squirmed free and ran off and mounted the nearest horse and fled Camp Grant. The kid didn't stick around to face murder charges. He left Arizona and returned to New Mexico. Now an outlaw and unable to find honest work, the kid met up with another outlaw, an important name for everyone to remember. This name of this guy was Jesse Evans. He was the leader of a gang of rustlers called the Boys. Don't get Jesse Evans mixed up with Jesse James, who's another outlaw from the Old West. He was the leader of the gang of rustlers called the Boys. The kid didn't have anywhere else to go, and since it was suicide to be alone in a hostile and lawless territory, the kid reluctantly joined the gang. The gang made their way to Lincoln County, where the Boys joined forces with James Dolan, who was currently in a feud against the Englishman entrepreneur named John Tunstall and his attorney and partner Alex McSween. The feud would be famously known as the Lincoln County War. At this point, I just want to go to step away from that script a little bit and just talk a little bit about the Santa Fe Ring. So if you're not familiar with Billy the Kid's backstory, he was an integral part of the Lincoln County War, as I just mentioned. Now, history will project this idea that there was a good side and a bad side to the Lincoln County War. The bad side being the Dolan and Murphy side of things. Now that is in some ways technically correct because of what was called the Santa Fe Ring. The Santa Fe Ring was a bunch of politicians, the state governor, all based in Santa Fe, which was probably the biggest location, the biggest town in the whole of New Mexico at this period of time. And that's where all the politicians, the judges, and all of them had investments in the Murphy and Dolan merchant store, which was based in Lincoln County in New Mexico. When I say they had money invested, it meant that they had lent money to Murphy and Dolan. And Murphy and Dolan's business wasn't doing very well, so they weren't able to pay back that money. So everybody in the county in this Santa Fe Ring had a vested interest in Murphy and Dolan's merchant factory doing a little bit better. Have you got cool pictures of Tunstall's Store Museum? Cool. So basically, John Tunstall was this English entrepreneur that came into Lincoln County, and what he wanted to do is he wanted to take away the monopoly that Dolan and Murphy had, that they were exacting over a lot of the Hispanic locals and not paying them what they should have been paid. And what Tunstall wanted was a more fair commerce, and for the farmers to get paid fair prices. And so I guess in that way, what you could say is that the guys that were on the side of the Tunstalls and McSween were fighting for equality, in the local area. So I guess that's where you get this idea of good and bad. But however, it's important to note at this point that the people that operated on the Alex McSween and John Tunstall side of the Lincoln War still committed really bad crimes and killings and murders and weren't saints or anything. So going back to the history of Billy the Kid, the boys, so that's Jesse Evans and his gang, started to steal Tunstall's livestock. So arrests were made and the kid eventually was caught and placed in jail. Tunstall noticed something different about this rustler. He wasn't rough like the other men, but just a boy who had got a bad start in life and was looking for a place to belong. So Tunstall gave him an ultimatum. If he testified against the other rustlers, Tunstall would hire him as an employee and get any indictments about him as an outlaw removed and give the kid a fresh start at an honest life. So the kid took Tunstall's offer, and now fighting for the Tunstall side and in the hopes of a better future, the kid changed his name to William H. Bonney. But his friends called him the Kid. Called him Kid. Tensions were high, and the feud between Dolan and Tunstall escalated to bloody violence. John Tunstall was brutally murdered by members of Sheriff Brady's posse and the boys. Sheriff Brady was the sheriff of Lincoln County at the time, and also had a vested interest in had lent money to Dolan and Murphy. So I had a vested interest in their business. Tunstall's ranch hands then formed a vigilante group called the Regulators, and now the war was on. At first, the deputized regulators tried to do things legally by serving warrants, but with the prejudice, Sheriff Brady, and the biased court system, they couldn't count on justice being served. So they took the law into their own hands. They retaliated by killing Bill Morton, Frank Baker, and William McCloskey. Then they ambushed Sheriff Brady and his deputy George Hindman in Lincoln Town. And lastly, they
outside
had a dramatic
this very shop, I believe. Actually, on the road here. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't have been tarmacked back then. It would have been more like what you imagine Deadpool and things to be. It would have just been like a dirt,
like the background that we've got up there on the screen. Yeah, like that. So yeah, basically, they killed McCloskey, they killed Frank Baker, and they killed and then the sheriff and his deputy. And lastly, there was a dramatic gunfight with Dolan gunman Buckshot Roberts. But during the shootout, their leader, the leader of the Regulators, Dick Brewer, was killed. The Regulators' revenge only made things worse, and they were now viewed as the bad guys, and warrants were put out for their arrest. Now, the Dolan side struck back. Dolan's gunman and newly appointed Sheriff George Pepin and his men had the McSween house surrounded with Alex McSween and many of the Regulators trapped inside. In actual fact, history tells us it was about 50 Regulators that were inside the house. A lot of films depict it as a handful, but it was a handful towards the end. But at first, there was about 60 Regulators trapped inside this house. Dolan sent for Colonel Dudley at Fort Stanton for assistance. The colonel came with troops along with a howitzer and Gatling gun. On the fifth day of the siege, the Dolan side was getting impatient, so they set the house on fire. By nightfall, the house was completely ablaze, and the heat from the flames was overwhelming. The Regulators began to panic, so the cool-headed Billy the Kid, only about 17 years old at this point, took over leadership of the men. The Kid divided the men into two groups. He led his party out the door first and ran in one direction, so as to draw the line of fire towards them, so McSween's party could make a run in another direction and get away. When the men began to run out of the burning house, the Dolan side opened fire and all hell broke loose. McSween and 3 men were killed, but Billy the Kid and the others escaped into the darkness. So the Lincoln County War was over, the regulators disbanded, and the kid was now a fugitive in New Mexico. Billy the Kid was unable to settle down, so he made his living as with gambling and rustling cattle. If you don't understand what rustling of cattle is, that's stealing cattle, but also equally it is protecting cattle as well. So you can be hired. Back in the day, you were hired by farmers to either go and steal some cattle off a neighbor or someone passing through the county, or you were hired as a rustler to protect their stock and their cattle. The kid heard about Governor Axtell being replaced by Lew Wallace, the governor of New Mexico, who was now trying to bring law and order to Lincoln. The kid wrote to the governor, and he was tired of running and would be happy to surrender to authorities and testify against the Dolan side to have his murder charges dropped. So the governor agreed and promised the kid a full pardon. The kid surrendered and testified in court, but the Santa Fe ring still had influence over the court system. So members of the Dolan side, including James Dolan himself, were acquitted. The kid was in unfriendly territory, and one of his threats was prosecutor attorney William Ryerson, who was part of the ring as well and wanted to put the kid on trial for murder of Sheriff Brady. The kid felt betrayed when he learned that Governor Wallace, who had promised him a pardon, didn't have the power to pardon him without Ryerson's cooperation, nor was the governor pressuring the attorney to collaborate with Wallace, and Wallace simply lost interest and left the kid to his fate. Billy the Kid now knew that he didn't stand a chance in court, and he had lost faith in the governor completely, and so once again he managed to escape from jail. So we're on about the third escape now. On the run again, and an outlaw, the kid went back to making a living the only way he knew how, rustling. And there were other outlaws and rustlers in New Mexico, much worse than Billy the Kid, but the kid had gained fame and was singled out by the newspapers, who had built him up into something he wasn't. There was dime novels. It's a very different one of the reasons why Billy the Kid's story is so much more standout or famous than a lot of other outlaws throughout the history of the Old West is because he was towards the sort of 1870s and 1880s. And at this time in the US, the east side of the country was kind of quite a lot more civilized. You had cities in New York, in Philadelphia. The east was quite industrialized, had railway, and things like that. So it was a lot more structured environment. But over in the west, it was still very wild and wild frontier, and people living in very small communities, nowhere built up, no real sort of roads or anything like that.
It was the time of deadwood and things like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So
I looked like I'd fit right in, to be honest.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, in the East, there was like newspapers that were circulated, there was books, it was a very much different society there. And because his adventures or his trials and the things that he was doing were happening at that time, they were being published while they were happening. And he was becoming famous whilst he was doing all of these things and still alive.
And
so,
one of the things that made him famous is because at the time when is it Sheriff Brady was killed, one of the first things that happened there as a part of the Lincoln Wars was because it was around like Tunstall's shop and all that. He was one of the first, because he's a kid, like he wanted to go out and see what was going on, and he was spotted, and because he was quite a young personality, a lot of people like recognized him, and so he was the first person spotted and identified as one of the main, or he wasn't actually one of the main like ringleaders of the posse at the time, but he was the one that was known to everyone because he was spotted there. He was the first person like identified, and because of that kind of built him a certain notoriety right from the get-go, really.
Yeah, but there was also a downside to that as well, is that they were getting a lot of the information wrong. So to sell the newspapers, to sell the dime novels, a lot of things were being over exaggerated. And also his description at times was being like really over exaggerated as well. So this is what's made the history of him quite complicated, because it's all just a bit of a mishmash. So since the end of the Lincoln County War, the kids spent the next 2 years eluding the law and living in around, again, another important name to remember, Fort Sumner, a former military fort that was transformed into a tiny Mexican village. While in Fort Sumner, he would kill a drunk at a saloon, but the killing was shrugged off and got almost no attention. But unfortunately, the kid got into more serious trouble that did get plenty of attention. And it happened when a posse from White Oak surrounded the kid and his gang at a station house during a standoff. And the posse accidentally killed their own deputy, James Carlisle. Of course, the death was credited to the kid and destroyed any ounce of sympathy the public had for him, not to mention any chance of him to get things squared up with the governor and get his pardon. As the kid dodged the law, Pat Garrett was elected sheriff and made U.S. Marshal to hunt for Billy the Kid. He was familiar with kids' habits and hideouts, which may show that Garrett may have been a rustler himself and at one time may have ridden with the kid. I don't think there's any dispute about that. Like, coming off of this script, it is absolutely clear through history that Pat Garrett and William H. Bonney, Billy the Kid, whatever you want to call him, knew each other quite well. During the pursuit for Billy the Kid, Garrett ended up killing two of the kid's closest comrades, Tom O'Folliard and Charlie Baldry. Finally, in December 23rd, 1880, Garrett trapped the kid and three other gang members at a cabin in Stinking Springs. After a short standoff, Billy the Kid came out and surrendered. Billy the Kid was quickly put on trial in Massilia and was sentenced to hang for the murder of Sheriff Brady. After his sentence was passed, the kid was taken to Lincoln to await his hanging.
Just want to show the courthouse in Massilia. So this is Massilia here. We were just at... hang on. Where are we? Where's... Oh, there's the reservation. Right. Oh, north's not north. That's why. Yeah. I was like, what? But we got Roswell here. There's Silver City, where he grew up earlier. And Sumner, Fort Sumner is up there. Lincoln's here. And then Celia is, where was it? It was down here somewhere, wasn't it? I'm going to have to go to the link. Hang on a minute. Here. So this is Celia. It's actually a little suburb on the edge of Las Crook. How do you pronounce that? Crookers? Whatever. Cruces. Massilia. And the courthouse in Massilia, if we go down here, is now a Billy the Kid gift shop. But that is the courthouse where he stood trial. In
brings
Massilia.
His story brings an incredible amount of tourism to many different areas of the Southwest, and that'll come up why in a little bit later. Everybody jumping on the bandwagon. But
yes, Kevin, if only there were paperboy rounds back then around the, maybe he wouldn't have got into so much trouble.
So anyway, as I said, it was Massilia that he was, they did his court, but they then transferred him to the he was taken to Lincoln to await his hanging. He was taken back to Lincoln. The kid was shackled and imprisoned in a room in the Lincoln courthouse.
Hang on, let me just find Lincoln again. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Lincoln Courthouse as 2 deputies took turns guarding over him. On April the 28th, 1881, the kid made his most daring escape, which would be his last. The kid was successful in getting a drop on the lone guard, Deputy James Bell, by slipping his hand out of his handcuffs and using the heavy restraints to hit the deputy over the head. The kid then jerked Bell's pistol and told him to throw up his hands, but instead the deputy ran, and the kid had no choice but to shoot him. He ran towards the building, and as the kid saw him approaching, the other guard, Bob Ollinger, was across the street having dinner when he heard the gunshots. He ran over to the building, and as the kid saw him approaching, he shot Ollinger down with his own shotgun. The kid rode out of Lincoln a free man and headed to the only place he could call home, and that was Fort Sumner.
So there's the courthouse where he was held. And
I want you to try and remember that image. No, actually, don't worry about it. Sorry, forget about it.
That's the courthouse, and the rest of the guards were actually over here in Wortley's Hotel having lunch. They were having lunch in that building, that exact building there.
One of them was Bob Ollinger.
Bob Ollinger was having lunch over here. And then so Billy the Kid, he wants to use the outhouse, yeah? So he gets asked to use the outhouse because, of course, they don't have indoor lavatories at that point. So they lead him out of a side door there over to about here where the outhouse was. And then on the way back through there and just up the stairs, just around that corner, I haven't got a better shot, he turns around and kills the first deputy. I can't remember the first one he kills. But you can just
the first one that he killed was James Bell.
Yes. You can see the white plaque there. He stumbles down the stairs and out the door and lies down on the floor, and he dies there where there's a little white plaque. And then, as you say, matey boy across the street is having his dinner, hears gunfire, comes running across the street. Billy's up in the window, that very window that's just behind that branch there. And what's the second deputy's name?
Bob Ollinger.
He goes, "Hiya, Bob." And shoots him in the head. And that little white plaque there on the floor is the marker of where Ollinger died.
Yeah, and he shot him with his own shotgun as well.
His own shotgun, yeah.
Yeah. So, getting back to our story, the kid decided he had laid low long enough until the law would give up hunting him, and he would rustle up some money and leave the territory. Apparently that was his plan. But by July of 1881, Garrett heard rumors that Billy the Kid was in Fort Sumner area. So with 2 deputies,
it's crazy, really, how little distance he went. I've got a link. So we know where that place is. So here we go. This here. So there's Fort Sumner. That's where he was hiding out in the middle of that green area there. Just down here, that's Roswell, and that's Lincoln. So you got Lincoln, Roswell, Fort Sumner, and
how many? When you say it's not very far away, how many miles are we talking?
Not that many. I don't know. It's in kilometers here, but that's 2 kilometers, so it's about 30 kilometers away. But I mean, he was caught. He was caught in Fort Sumner originally, and he was hiding out here, just to the south of it. I mean, at a mate's place, no less.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll come back to that in more detail later. So on July 14th, 1881, just before midnight, Pat Garrett waited until the town was quiet before he slipped into Pete Maxwell's room and asked him about Billy the Kid. Garrett was a former employee of Pete Maxwell's, and it's possible that Maxwell tipped Garrett off that the kid was in the area. At that exact moment, the kid with a knife in hand went to Maxwell's house to get some fresh beef for a late steak dinner.
Did he find any coffee?
Approached, did he what?
Find any coffee?
I don't know. Do you believe he was looking
Maxwell
for coffee?
House.
Oh, Maxwell. Very funny. As he approached, he saw Garrett's two deputies on the porch, and since he didn't recognize the strangers, he backed cautiously into Maxwell's room. As he walked towards the bed, he saw Garrett's silhouette and started to back away and asked him in Spanish who's there. Garrett recognized the kid's voice and fired his gun. The bullet pierced the kid's heart, and he fell to the floor. Garrett and Maxwell ran out of the room and huddled outside with the two deputies and waited. They could hear the kid gasp for breath, and then all was quiet. Billy the Kid was dead. The next day, Billy the Kid was buried at Fort Sumner Cemetery near his two fallen companions, Tomo Folliard and Charlie Bowdry. He was killed not for who he really was, but for what people thought he was. He was a pawn in a losing game, and he was made a scapegoat for other outlaw crimes. Although he did participate in killings, the men he fought against were much worse than he ever was. If it weren't for for our attraction to Billy the Kid, the history of the Lincoln County War and its participants probably would have been long forgotten. And thanks to Billy the Kid, New Mexico has a thriving business in tourism, as a steady flow of tourists each year come to visit the Billy the Kid sites. Even in death, Billy the Kid is likable, and he has got a large following of people all over the world. Now, I want to read you out this section that I'm going to take from Britannica. Now, Britannica is kind of like an online encyclopedia. They used to do the physical encyclopedias. And one thing that you can get from Wikipedia and or Britannica is they're starting to change some of the things that they say when they're talking about Billy the Kid, and they're starting to absorb multiple potential histories. So what I'm about to read you out comes from Britannica. So as a child, Billy the Kid went under the name Henry McCarty. Scholarly opinion is divided over whether it was that or William H. Bonney Jr., the name that he used later in his trial, which of them was his true name. So historians are still undecided about what was his true name. However, another hypothesis is that Billy the Kid was in fact Ollie L. Bushy Bill Roberts, who escaped, lived in New Mexico and the U.S. Southwest and in Mexico, and rode Wild West shows and died in 1950 in Hicko, Texas. So that gives you a little bit of a clue about what we're going to talk about this evening. But before we get to that, I want to do a bit of myth busting about Billy the Kid, and some interesting facts as well. Because if you are familiar with Billy the Kid, you may be slightly familiar with, as I said earlier, from depictions in films. There's a lot of films that have covered him. There's a new TV series that's out right now on Amazon that's just been developed. It's gone through 2 seasons, and I hear that it's been signed up to a 3rd. But there's a lot of things where, the story just isn't relayed historically correct. So, Monte, have you ever seen like Young Guns and Young Guns 2, the films?
Yeah, I watched them with you years, many years ago. So
one of the main things to myth bust straight away is that in a lot of both old films, sort of films that were made in the 1960s, all the way up to sort of like the 80s, and the way it's being projected in recent TV series, the one thing that they get wrong a lot of the time is that a lot of the people that surround Billy are kind of like Billy's age or similar. So if you take Young Guns, for example, they were all young. The actual reality is that the people that he rode with or hung out with most of the time were old guys, middle-aged to old guys. There was a reason why he was given the name the Kid, because he looked very young for his age, first and foremost, but even at his age, he was still quite young to be riding with some of these experienced cattle riders, cattle rustlers. And it was very uncommon that that would happen, but it was because Billy could handle himself so well with guns, that he was accepted in with a lot of these groups, like the Jesse Evans gang and some of the later gangs that he rode with before that and after the Lincoln County War. And, you know, hopefully I'll get time later on to talk about some of the things that, you know, again, an uncommon or a very common myth is that Billy was left-handed. That, again, is incorrect. Actually, what historians have been able to find out is that it wasn't that he wasn't not left-handed or that he was right-handed, but he was actually ambidextrous. And he was equally, and this is such a rare thing in those days, that he was good at firing revolvers with both his hands. And it's his exploits that have given popular idea to the whole thing of the two guns. Although he wore his guns very differently, he didn't wear them with the handles faced backwards. He wore them so that he could pull them out this way, which is actually fact, because you can see that in his tintype photograph that he's got his gun uncommonly turned around. And there was quite a lot of specific things that Billy the Kid liked to do with his gun, or his guns, I should say. He was very, very particular about them, like OCD about guns. And one of the things is he would only ever use a 44 Colt revolver. And he used to do a special thing to it where he would enhance the single shot format of it. So he used to customize his guns as well. It was a Winchester rifle that he was particularly fond of, but he was known for being like, there are documented exploits that he was able to shoot things that twice in the air at the same time. So, you know, for that kind of thing to happen, a lot of skill. But that's what got him away with being able to hang around with these real old school, you know, crims and outlaws and hustlers and things like that. So
don't they say that God made man, but Colt 44 made them equal? Something like that.
Yeah.
I like the fact here. This is Billy the Kid's grave.
Well, it's not. It is and it isn't. So,
well,
100%, his remains are nowhere near that tombstone, and that isn't even the original tombstone. Because actually, the grave wasn't given a tombstone; it was given a wooden headboard, which was actually used as target practice. But the original grave, or the said grave of the status quo burial of Billy the Kid, was actually washed away in, I think it was 1906 from flooding in the area. It was
so my joke that the fact that they only managed to keep him behind bars after he died is actually incorrect, because you're saying that even though they've got bars around him now, 100 years after he's died, he's still not there.
No.
He's escaped. No. God damn it, Billy.
I don't even know why they've done that, to be honest with you.
It's to stop people nicking the tombstone. Showy.
Yeah, but it's not the original tombstone. That was erected much later down the line.
I know, but it's a pain in the ass, isn't it, having to keep replacing it?
So. and the remains of anybody that was buried there, whether it be Tom Folliard, Charlie Bowdry, or him, the remains were, historians are pretty firm on the fact that they were washed away and lost, you know, a long time ago. But yeah, interesting joke, and I like the idea that it actually isn't there, so he's got away with it again. So amazing. Yeah, so going back to what I was saying, you know, things like in Young Guns, you have like Kiefer Sutherland playing the character of Doc Scurlock. You know, Doc Scurlock at the time of the Lincoln County War was about 60 years old. You know, in that film, and also a couple of other things, they kind of, in some books, they also say that Doc Scurlock left and went back east with an Asian wife and became a teacher. Again, that's not true. He did leave Lincoln County with an Asian wife, but he actually went to Texas, and that's where he lived out the remainder of his life and died around, I think it was 84 he died, and he was an owner and a manager of a convenience store. So, there's a lot of incorrect, again, in Young Guns 2, they go one further and actually have Doc Scurlock die in the film. But in Young Guns, they have Billy the Kid kill Murphy, and he never did. So there's a lot of things that, are very artistic interpretation and great for great storytelling, but not historically correct and true to the story. So
Hollywood doing what Hollywood does.
Yeah. But interesting fact about Billy the Kid is that no other iconic character, from not just an outlaw, but any historical character, has been depicted in film as many times as Billy the Kid. Yeah,
and we don't even know who he really was 100% certain.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing, is that, historians, even the status quo historians, will argue and debate about certain little details. Where's my photos? Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some photos of the man himself, and I'm going to give you some stories around these photos, because there's also photos that have come up at various different times, and certainly in the last few years there's more photos that are coming forward that people are claiming are Billy the Kid, and we're going to talk about some of them as well. So did you have a picture of the tintype that you could share to make my life
I do.
a little bit easier?
Yeah, I do.
I just need to see which version of it is, because I really want to show it in its
It's not great. It's not great. Stop showing that. No, don't do that. No. Yes, there we go.
I don't know how much truth there is to what Sean put in chat there. That's not too bad. The point is that I want to show what it looks like in its true form. Anyway, so this is the original tintype of Billy the Kid, known as the Dendrick Upham tintype. It is the only 100% authenticated picture of Billy the Kid so far that it's got that 100% stamp of approval.
So all the ones we see based on this that look a lot better, that have been touched up, they've kind of just been embellished. They've embellished this tintype, haven't they?
Well,
or is there others?
No. What I'll do is I'll go off script a little bit here. So the thing is, I have typed out a lot of stuff because I'm incredibly bad at getting sidetracked and forgetting about things that I want to say. So that's why I've done this, is because I'm so passionate about it. I don't want to forget to say things that are important. But here's the thing. So this original tintype, there was only 6 copies of it ever made. And we'll talk a little bit about tintype in the process in a minute. But so there were 6 copies of this made. And what Billy the Kid did is he gifted them to various people. And one of the people he gifted it to was a friend of his named Dan Dendrick. He gifted it to a lot of other people, like supposedly he gave one to Paulina Maxwell as well, or Devlina Maxwell. He gave one to Pat Garrett. And again, that goes to prove a lot that, they had some sort of friendship beforehand. But all the others have been lost. The only one that's been recovered is the one from the Dendrick family. And it was actually Dan Dendrick, who knew Billy and used to hang out with him. He passed it to his nephew, who was called Frank L. Upham, who gave it to Elizabeth Upham, his daughter-in-law. And he gave it to her in 1949. Now, from 1949 to 1980, this bloody thing sat in a box and was seen by nobody. And or over its history was actually displayed. So it's been really damaged, because a tintype photo isn't of its time, it was a cheap way to get a photo done. It was low cost. This photo was probably taken by a traveling photographer who would travel through different areas to allow people the opportunity to have photographs taken. But it was a very cheap way of having your photograph taken. And the way in which they used the process, I believe, if I'm correct, is it was like 4 cameras or multiple cameras, and they each print an image on thin sheets of tin, which are all put together to make the total image. And basically, over the years, where this photograph has been displayed and people have nailed it up onto a wall, so it's got like 2 holes in it at the top, where people have touched it, it's got the oils have done damage to it, so like where you look around his middle area and it looks like he's wearing the worst sack of potato trousers ever, and he just looks, that's not actually the case. That's the damage from the photo. And there's other copies which will show hopefully later, which, you know, people have done their work on it and cleaned it up and done their fixing, and give you much more of a what the photograph would look like. But because the photograph is so damaged and it didn't get out into the public domain, because it was that daughter-in-law, Elizabeth Uppen, who then in 1980, I believe she gave it to Lincoln County Museum to display, and she lent it to them. And then that was then again when, you know, members of the public first got to then see this tintype. So it's only really been going under analysis and like scrutiny since 1980. Now, the circulation of the picture was going on way before that, because what Pat Garrett did is he didn't want to use his copy or lost his copy or whatever, and he took a stencil, like a copy of the picture, and that's what he used in his book that he released after the supposed killing of Billy the Kid, that was released and published 2 years after the killing of Billy the Kid. And in that book he uses like a stenciled or a carbon copied copy of this photo, so it's not the photo, it's just like the outline. And that's where between then and then 1980, that's the only image that people had to go by of what Billy the Kid really looked like. And everybody knew that it was an image that had come from an original photo, but nobody could find the original photo. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, was it Paulina Maxwell?
Paulina Maxwell.
Paulina. Paulina or Paulita? Anyway, I think she said at the time when he gave her this, and it was been recorded, that she said that it didn't do him justice. She didn't actually like the photo. She thought it made him look ugly. And,
no, because, yeah, again, the damage, like one of the things that's really popular, and it really frustrates me because now, and, you know, if you want to, Monte, you can Google, you know, the AI kids have got hold of it, and they've started doing an AI version of Billy the Kid where they make him move. And because they've taken it directly from the tintype, because of the damage that happened and because of the quality of the photo, it's distorted his looks. So some of his looks about how angled his one eye is above the other is not how it would have been in the original photo. It'd be nice to bring up some other versions. I don't have I got the cleaned up version? Let me just see if I've got the cleaned up version. Oh yeah, no, this is the AI. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy though. That is actually, AI is a weird friggin', like, what it can do. I mean, that's just insane.
Yeah. But it just makes it look like as if one eye is kind of like, I don't know, doesn't look the same as the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but I mean,
no. But what I'm saying
next to what we were just looking at a minute ago.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is even Paulina was saying that the picture now isn't like a representation of what he looked like,
Mm.
because it's skewed how he looks in a lot of ways. You can see, like as I said, when you can you just Google like a cleaned up, or try and find a cleaned up version of just the picture, because I was showing you in the damaged version that Monte had up on the screen, like how bad his trousers look, because a lot of the detail and a lot of the definition has been lost. It'd be nice for us to have a look at the cleaned up version of just the picture, not the AI, just so that you can see just what difference it makes to features. But they can't fully repair the face because they can only go off of what's on the picture. I guess, I don't know. But if you can get in close enough to this picture, you'll see that he's wearing a cardigan. And I want you to also remember that as well, because Billy the Kid was also had another reputation of being like quite a strange dresser for his time, and made choices that weren't very common. And one of those choices, and what I mean is, it made him more, I guess, aligned with the locals and the Hispanic population that was in that area, where they would wear more knitwear. Whereas like cowhands and cow rustlers and stuff didn't wear knitwear, but he was very fond of a cardigan. So yeah, but that's do you see what I'm talking about? Like how the trousers are now sorted out and it looks, more correct.
Mm.
But yeah, really, really interesting. And this is the reason why this photo is the only authenticated photo is because it has provenance. For those of you that don't know what provenance is, it's being able to show the backstory of something and, date it and be able to catalog and actually track it throughout a history. And because of everything that who this photo came from, and it came from people that knew Billy the Kid and were friends with Billy the Kid and historically recorded as being friends with Billy the Kid, it's pretty much, undoubtedly it is him. However, along the way, there are plenty of pictures that have come up, that have arisen. However, a lot of them have been hugely debunked. And they're more so ones that came up, in the 70s and 80s. But in the last, let me think.
I didn't even notice he was wearing a cardigan. That's crazy.
Yeah, you don't get the detail of that from the original tintype without it being cleaned up. Yeah, so basically, I think the first one of this popped on the scene about 2005, so not very long ago. And the first one that I'm going to bring your attention to, oh no, that's not the right copy of it.
Kevin says you can tell he's American, though, because he's a kid with a gun. It's very true. It's very true.
I've lost you. Where are you? Where is the stream?
I'm here somewhere. I'm around.
Yeah. Doing all the sharing screen, it's challenging, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Where's that picture just gone that I just opened?
Luckily, I'm surrounded by a plethora of screens.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to close down some pictures that I've opened because it's all getting a bit chaotic.
I'm building my new desk tomorrow. That's exciting.
Building your new desk?
Got a new desk. It goes up and down. You push button. It goes...
Oh, yes. We were discussing it last weekend, weren't we? That you'll be able to do some of your streaming stood up.
It's crazy.
Oh, God, this is getting so hard to do. So what's it wanting me to do instead? It's wanting me to share screen. And then is it Chrome? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this picture that is now ready to share, Monty, is already being sort of titled the croquet picture. If you want to, I can sort of...
Yeah, sure.
I'll zoom in a minute. I'll zoom in a minute, and I've got some other versions to show you. But basically, it's a lot of historians have got a hold of this one. Now, this one popped up at a. I'm just trying to make sure I get it the right way round.
Is that the house he grew up in?
No, hold on. I'm trying to remember. Okay, yes. So this one is the one that was bought in. No, was it the other one? One of the two that I'm about to show you was bought in a junk shop. So
Right.
it was bought in a junk shop. Somebody then got hold of it.
They're playing croquet. It's the croquet one.
Yes, and basically,
I know.
either the person who bought this for $2 in a junk shop. Now, this hasn't got the stamp of authenticated, but it's authenticated enough that this sold at auction for £1.2 million.
Yeah.
And either the person that bought it for $2 from the junk shop or somebody that they knew got it in hand, looked at it, and started going, "Oh, that looks like so and so." And then when they've then got it, historians have got hold of it. What they've been able to confirm is you can see in that picture on the very right hand side, there's a gentleman on a horse, and they've been able to confirm that that's Charlie Bowdry, who was a regulator. Because Charlie Bowdry had a lot more photographs taken of him. And he also got married to a local woman in Fort Sumner, where this picture is believed to be, and they can locate the building or whatever. But there's other members of the regulators that have been identified in there. Now, what I'm going to do is just quickly share.
Unfortunately, none of the buildings in Fort Sumner that are around at this time exist today. It's not like Lincoln. It was an Indian hospital, and then it became a military fort before it was taken over by just people to make it into a town. But then it was bulldozed for the new Fort Sumner town that's there today. So none of the buildings exist, unfortunately. People wonder why I didn't actually zoom in on anything there. It's because there's nothing there to see.
Yeah, well, I've got a zoomed in photo, and if you can just bring that one up onto the feed now. So this is a zoomed in version, so we're right in the middle of the original version now, and the gentleman that stood there with the striped cardigan on is meant to be Billy the Kid. One of the things that historians have told us even before these photos came out is that one of the things that Billy the Kid was recorded or known for was having a really particular stance where he stood up really, really straight and had really great posture. But he was about 5'8", had certain qualities that can be seen in the original tintype. The fact that he had big sticky out ears, which again, when you get a close up on this gent, he has got quite big ears. He just fits the description. He's there playing croquet.
His brother had big sticky out ears as well, because he had a brother.
It was a half brother,
Yeah.
and probably, if you believe one side of another story, not even his brother. But
he does look a bit like him, though. He does have sticky out ears, and he's got the same ears. But anyway.
But also the other thing is they're playing croquet, which was not a popular sport in the US around the Midwest, but believed that, and again documented that Tunstall brought it to the cattle hands and the regulators that hung around with him. He brought it over from England and taught them how to play croquet. And Billy was apparently, and again, historians have recorded that he was fond of playing croquet. So kind of
Fun fact,
a lot of things.
I have a croquet set. I'm quite a fan of croquet.
Well, there you go.
It's very English gentleman of me, isn't it?
But it's just a good thing that, and again, the reason why this picture for me, I feel very strong that is a Billy the Kid, and that is regulated.
I think it is. Yeah.
But the problem is it can't be authenticated and given that 100% stamp because it doesn't have provenance. It's got no past. It's got no history of where it came from, who took it, when was it taken. So that's really, a big shame. And then very recently...
It's got belief behind it, though, isn't it? A lot of people believe it is.
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely.
It's culturally already become a thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter anymore whether it is or it's him. It is that
I
photo,
guess
isn't
not.
it?
No. I mean, this is where historians are really split, because if you speak to certain historians, and this is documented in books, there's certain historians that would say that croquet picture now, they are like that as far as I'm concerned, is authentic, but it can't be given that stamp. And then other people will use that as an argument. Well, it's not authentic because it doesn't have any provenance. So, but if you wouldn't mind sharing again a picture that I've just put up, this is another one that popped up. This one popped up more recently, around, I think, about 2008, 2009. What's really interesting about this one is...
Yes, Mickey, they should just use the... They should just checked out the metadata on that photo, shouldn't they, to see what the time and date stamp was. They're not thinking about these things, are they?
Where is my notes? Why does that not keep showing? Oh, there we go. Right. So this photo is more authenticated because it has provenance, apparently. The photo, which has been kept by the same family for over a century, was originally handed over to the seller's grandfather by the widow of David Anderson, aka Billy Wilson, who befriended Billy during the war. After receiving a pardon from President Grover Cleveland in 1896, he went on to serve as sheriff of Terrell County and also worked as a U.S. Customs inspector. In a letter detailing the photograph's journey into his family, vendor Thomas Anderson said, "When my grandfather and family went to pay their respects to the widow of David Anderson in the 1918 funeral, she gifted him with, among other items, a small leather family photograph album. She explained to my grandfather's family about the history of the photograph and how Billy had gifted the photo to her husband." In addendum, Anderson said that the photo remained in his family through 3 generations continuously until 2010. At that time, I was unfortunately in need of immediate funds for a family crisis and had no alternative but to sell the photo. He added that he was very despondent for several years over the loss of the photo until 2018, when this gentleman I spoke of suddenly listed the photo on eBay for sale. I then proceeded to buy it back from him at that time, and it has remained in its original condition in my family possession up to present day. The photo has been verified by the George Eastman Museum in Texas, which historian Mark Osterman said the image was consistent with being a collodion tintype photo produced between 1817 and 1890. So that historian, just to clarify, isn't saying that it's Billy the Kid. He's confirming that it is a tintype that was made between 1817 and 1890, but it's believed to be, I think, 2 of the other people at the table are meant to be Tom O'Folliard and one of the other regulators, but not Charlie. And the one in the red circle is meant to be Billy the Kid. And again, if you think about that against the original tintype, if you then all of a sudden saw him look up, I think some of the features are very, very similar, and it's a shame that that guy's hat is in the way of seeing his ear.
Yeah.
Seeing whether it's a fairly big ear.
Really
but
tell.
again, this is another one that's popped up. Now, the reason why I wanted to cover these photos will become apparent later. Yeah, so that's all the photos to share for the minute.
I've got 2.
Have you?
Yeah.
Coolios.
I've got 2. I found them in some YouTube videos. I've just been doing, because I know nothing. This is kind of, I didn't know anything until a few hours ago. Everything I've spouted, anything I've said today is just from what I've read today. But With these two YouTube videos, though, we've got apparently. Well, this one actually you drew my attention to.
Well, earlier this evening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put this one up first.
Literally, I just came across this like an hour before we went live.
So this is posted by YouTube channel Kruglug Badax. No information about it, really.
The only information is embedded within the video where he shares his thoughts and makes comment about who's who. The video shows you where he makes comparison to other known photos of the individuals. So the guy sat down playing the fiddle is meant to be Pat Garrett. And he brings up a picture of Pat Garrett and puts it next to him and does a close in on him. The guy stood next to the guy in the middle is meant to be Tomo Folliard, who was a close friend of Billy the Kid, and the guy in the center is meant to be Billy. But the picture that he brings up where he shows a known authenticated image of Tomo Folliard looks to me like almost identical. There's features which are like, if you get the zoom in, this guy in this picture where his hair is parted is exactly where Tomo Folliard's hair is parted in the picture, and it would be around the similar time as well, similar sort of age. But again, that's another myth that, you know, in some of the films, Tomo Folliard is presented as this really young kid versus Billy, whereas actually he was, I think, about 1.5 years older than Billy. But it was just that he, you know, the thing about Billy was that he just carried himself better than any other kid of his age would, with confidence around those kind of people. And so therefore people thought that Tom was actually younger than Billy, but Billy was the youngest.
And the other one is this one. And I'll just play this one for a moment.
Garrett. Next to him is believed to be Deputy Bob Olinger, that Billy will kill while later on trying to escape jail. It's believed that Billy is the one on the right, and notice the deputy holding a gun to Billy's head. The posse took Billy back to Fort Sumner.
Anyway, there. So that supposedly could be Billy the Kid as well. It's difficult.
Yeah,
it's so blurry. You just can't. You can't see really. But...
Yeah. Well, I think this one's confused, or the person that's made this, because this is pictures that are used to substantiate Bushy Bill Roberts, who we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
So I think I should jump into that because this is going to take a bit of a time. So, yeah. So I mentioned to you earlier, I just want to rewind a little bit and just go back to that statement from Britannica where they said, as a child, Billy the Kid was named Henry McCarthy. Scholarly opinion was he's divided over whether he was actually William H. Bonney or, Henry McCarthy was his true name. Another hypothesis is that Billy the Kid was in fact Ollie L. Bushy Bill Roberts, who escaped and lived in Mexico and the US Southwest and rode in Wild West shows and died in 1950 in Hicko, Texas. So, who is Bushy Bill Roberts? Who is he, and was he Billy the Kid? Well, let's begin the story. So in 1948, William V. Morrison, a probate investigator working in St. Louis, Missouri, was sent to Florida to work on a case of an elderly man named Joe Hines. Hines was claiming that the land of his recently deceased brother now belonged entirely to him, since he was the only surviving heir. While Morrison and Hines talked, Hines admitted that he was Jesse Evans, who, after he had been released from prison in Texas in 1882, had by all accounts disappeared. Hines then told Morrison of his experiences in the Lincoln County War and with Billy the Kid. This held a special interest to Morrison since he was related to the Maxwell family of Fort Sumner. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I was like, whoa, that's really loud. Yeah. As I go through this, guys, if you have any questions, by all means, drop it in the chat. I'll get Monty to keep an eye on the chat.
Sorry, poor G could hear me then. You guys couldn't. So
that was really, really loud. It's hard for me to even hear myself.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to go back just a little bit. So this held a special interest for Morrison, who was the probate investigator, since he was related to the Maxwell family of Fort Sumner. So when he proclaimed to Hines that the kid had met his death at the hands of Sheriff Pat Garrett in the house of one of his relatives, he was shocked to have Hines reply that the kid was not killed by Garrett or by anyone else, and for that matter, was still living. Hines went on to say that besides himself and Billy, there was only one other surviving veteran of the Lincoln County War named Jim McDaniels, a member of the Jesse Evans gang. So, further intrigued, Morrison probed Hines for the kid's name and address, and the old man finally consented, and he gave Billy's current name as Ollie L. Bushy Bill Roberts and his address as Hamilton, Texas. Now, several months later, after completing the Hines case, in which Hines was given his brother's land. So I just want to really clarify what went on there. So Jesse Evans went to prison in 1882, came out of prison, and then disappeared from all history books and anyone's knowledge. Changed his name to Joe Hines to be able to get work or not have this credit of being, Jesse Evans, a criminal and an outlaw. So obviously changed his name to Joe Hines. His brother didn't ever change his name. His brother was referred to as Evans. So when his brother died and left him his farm, he couldn't claim it unless he said, I am Jesse Evans. So this Joe Hines had to prove that he was the outlaw Jesse Evans. And he successfully managed to do that and reclaimed his brother's farm. And William Morrison handled that case, and now several months later, after completing the Hines case, in which Hines was given his brother's land, Morrison struck up a written correspondence with Bushy Bill. Throughout that early correspondence, Morrison was careful not to reveal what exactly Hines had told him about his true identity. At the same time, Morrison attempted to track down Jim McDaniels, yet this proved an impossible feat. He managed to track him as far as Road Rock, Texas, but townsfolk there said that he had moved in 1945 to live out the rest of his days with his daughter in California. Giving up on McDaniels' angle, Morrison wrote to Bushy and told him that he would like to meet him. Bushy agreed, and in June 1949, Morrison visited the old man in his small shack in Hamilton, Texas. In his journal, Morrison noted Bushy to be about 5 foot 8 inches tall and weighing about 165 pounds, with blue eyes, small hands, large wrists, heavy shoulders, and thinning grey hair, high forehead, prominent nose, and large ears. Now, some of those indicators are really important. Certainly the large wrists and small hands, because it's very commonly known that the reason why Billy was able to escape a lot from places and jails, and certainly escape the Lincoln County Jail, was because he was able to get out the cuffs. And the way that he did this was doing a double joint thing, which made his hands smaller than his wrists, so then the cuffs would slip off. So this is just what Morrison noted down when he met Bushy. Bushy invited the visitor inside and introduced him to his wife, Melinda. Morrison wasted no time and asked Bushy whether he truly was Billy the Kid, to which Bushy denied, saying that his half-brother living in Mexico was the real Billy the Kid. Somewhat disappointed, Morrison decided to leave, but asked Bushy if it might be possible to take a trip to Mexico someday soon and interview his brother. On the way out of the door, Bushy stopped Morrison and told him to come back in the afternoon of the next day, when his wife would be out visiting a friend and they would have the house themselves. Morrison did indeed return the following day, and Brushy admitted to him that he truly was Billy the Kid, only he didn't want to say it in front of his wife. Brushy then went on to say that he knew he didn't have many years left in him and wanted to die with a full pardon that he had been promised by Governor Lew Wallace back in 1879. He obviously didn't want his wife to know because he didn't want his wife to think poorly of him. Morrison said that he would help the old man in his case, but only if he could be shown proof that Brushy was the claimant to be, that he claimed to be. At this request, Brushy took off his clothes, exposing 26 bullet and knife scars on his body, several matching known locations of wounds Billy the Kid allegedly had. Brushy also demonstrated the ability to, in a kind of double-jointed move, make his hands smaller than his wrists, which the real Billy was known to do in order to slam handcuffs off. Believing that Brushy could be the real deal, Morrison promised him that he would do all he could to help him obtain the pardon, providing Brushy would allow him to investigate further into his history and find more proof that he was authentic. Brushy agreed, and the two parted company for the day. Over the next several months, Morrison met with Brushy several times and recorded his story in his journal and with a tape recorder. All the while, the pair were careful to make sure that Mrs. Roberts was kept in the dark over the entire proceedings, as Brushy didn't want her to learn his true identity and be disgusted with him for his reputation. Now, the next part of information that I'm going to share with you is what Brushy was doing between the years of the supposed death of Billy the Kid up to when he met with William Morrison. Now,
hang on,
what I'm about
just for my own thing. This is what it was. That was what like Young Guns 2 was about, wasn't it? With Emilio Estevez as like an old man in like the late 50s. Is that
they awoke the attention on it. Not awoke it, but even some of the things that they put in that film, don't really sort of do it justice, really. The way they talk about it, it's like he didn't meet him in the middle of a desert. He wasn't coming out of the desert on a donkey to meet with this William Morrison. He was in a town in Texas.
They go to a diner or something.
Well, they visited. They did a lot of stuff, and there was actually a lot of. I'm going to go on and eventually tell the story of all the things that happened to Brushy Bill before he died. And, definitely a lot of evidence. But basically, what I'm about to describe to you now is what Brushy Bill said he did between 1881, when Billy the Kid was shot, and between 1949, when he first met with William Morrison.
Right.
Now, this isn't just his words, though, because he relayed this to William Morrison, and other people that have written this book have then gone and then researched all of these events and locations that he said, and they've been able to find photographs, documentation that all prove that this man, whether he was Billy the Kid or not, this man was at these places where he said he was. Now, listen to this story. In a nutshell, Brushy's story went like this. He was born William Henry Roberts on December the 31st, 1859, in an area of Texas known as Buffalo Gap. His parents were James H. and Mary Andelin Roberts. Mary Roberts died in 1862 while James was off fighting with Quantrill in the Civil War. He said that Catherine McCarty, who was not his mother, but his maternal half-aunt. After his mother died, Brushy went to live with Catherine and her son, Joe. Since Brushy was so young and Catherine moved around so much, everyone just assumed that Brushy was her son. Fearing that Brushy's father might try to take him back, she covered her tracks and gave him the name Henry McCarty to Brushy as an alias. When Brushy told of his days as Billy the Kid from 1877 to 1881, Morrison determined that Brushy knew way too much about the history of the Kid and the Lincoln War to have read all about it. Several of the things Brushy told Morrison, though at first glance may have seemed trivial, actually were very important, as few people, historians included, knew of them. When it came to the events of the night of July 14th, 1881, Brushy said that the man named Billy Barlow, remember that name, was killed by Pat Garrett. Barlow, he said, was partially Mexican, had a beard, looked like the Kid, was a little younger than the Kid, and was possibly related to the Clements family, the cousins of John Wesley Hardin. Brushy also said that he doubted that Billy Barlow was the man's real name. After Barlow was killed, Brushy continued. He fled Fort Sumner. After fleeing Sumner, now this is where it gets really interesting, his story went that he lived in Mexico with a tribe of Yaqui Indians for 2 years, returned to the US and worked in Carlton, Texas, was arrested in Kansas City because he was recognized as the kid, but was released. Worked for Buffalo Bill Cody in the Wild West show. Worked for the Anti-Horse Thief Association from 1985 to 1889. Worked for Judge Isaac Parker of Fort Smith, Arkansas. Joined the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Worked as a U.S. Marshal investigating train robberies. Joined the Rough Riders and went to Cuba. Briefly operated his own Wild West show. Fought for Villa and Carranza in the Mexican Revolution. And worked as a plainclothes policeman in Gladewater, Texas. Married 4 times and used a dozen aliases. And majority of everything that I've just gone through has been tracked down and proven, and there's photographs, and that's why it's really great to read this book, because it's all in there. I'll just give you some examples. So this is they found Bushy Brill pictures, and some of these came from his collection, but this is with the Bronco Riders that were a famous horse display. Really skilled horse riders that went around the world doing this show. Again, he was part of Wild West shows. He worked for Buffalo Bill Cody. So whether this guy was Billy the Kid or not, he had the most amazing, exciting, and interesting life. You're looking, Chris.
Sorry, yes, I'm looking at images. Sorry. Yeah. You caught me.
in the fall of 1949, Morrison took Brushy with him to New Mexico for the purpose of having Brushy meet some of the surviving acquaintances of Billy the Kid to see if they could verify or deny his claim. Earlier, Morrison had given the names Billy's remaining acquaintances by other respected historians, such as Morris Fulton and William Kahia. So basically, this investigator was given the names of these acquaintances of Billy the Kid by known historians. So while in New Mexico, the pair stopped at sites such as Fort Sumner and Lincoln. In the courthouse in Lincoln, Brushy detailed to Morrison how he, as Billy the Kid, made his famous escape and killed deputies Bob Ollinger and James Bell. By the time they had completed their trip and returned to Brushy's home in Hicko, Texas, he had moved from Hamilton in the summer of 1949. They had managed to meet with Severo Gallegos, Martil Abel, and Jose Montoya, and Bill and Sam Jones. The first 3 all signed legal affidavits attesting to the fact that Brushy Bill and Billy the Kid were one and the same. And the Jones brothers, although they did not sign the affidavits, claiming they didn't want to get involved with the proceedings because they were businessmen, also stated their agreement with this. In the summer of 1950, Morrison moved along with his family to El Paso. So he moved his whole family from where they lived to El Paso, Texas, in order to be closer to anything he may need to investigate. He believed in Brushy Bill's story so passionately. With the help of Ted Andrus, a lawyer from El Paso law firm, Morrison drew up the papers necessary for Brushy's pardon. Afterwards, Morrison wrote a report entitled A Statement of Facts, which stated that Billy Bonney was promised a pardon in 1879 by Governor Wallace, and that Billy was not killed in 1881 and still deserved his pardon. Included with the report were various documents related to Billy's life and the affidavits from Gallegos, Abel, and Montoya, along with affidavits from 2 of Brushy's friends, DeWitt Travis and Robert Lee, detailing other aspects of his life, like I was just talking about just a minute ago, and all the stuff that he did in the Wild West shows. Again, with the help of Andres, Morrison filed the petition for the pardon on November the 15th, 1950. Evening, Tavi. And then Thomas Mabry... of course, I lost my place. Again, with the help of Andros, Morrison filed for the petition for the pardon on November the 15th, 1950. Thomas J. Mabry, governor of New Mexico, agreed to a private hearing with Morrison and Brushy, along with one or two historians of Mabry's choosing, to be held on November 29th. Now, this is really important to hone in on, because what he said to him is it will just be a private meeting, just us and two historians. On the morning of the 29th, as Morrison and Brushy were at breakfast in a Santa Fe diner, Morrison read in a local newspaper that Mabry had publicly announced his meeting with Billy the Kid claimant. So Morrison immediately telephoned Mabry, who apologized for making the announcement, but reassured him that the meeting would still be kept private. A few hours later, bear in mind, I haven't really pointed this out at the moment, Brushy Bill Roberts at this time is 90 years old. Right? So,
Yeah.
you know, anybody when they're 90, you've got to deal with situations with them delicately.
Yeah, they're 90. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So basically, they're in this diner. He rings him. A few hours later, Brushy and Morrison arrive at Mabry's mansion. Upon entering the conference room, they are shocked at what they saw. Present in the room, and this again is all documented, were several photographers and reporters, armed policemen, but also Oscar and Jarvis Garrett, Pat Garrett's sons, Cliff McKinney, who was John McKinney's son, who was one of the deputies who was involved in the killing of Billy the Kid, Arcadio Brady, who was William Brady's, Sheriff Brady, grandson, who Billy the Kid killed, and historians William Keeler and E.B. Mann, and Will Robinson. I don't know who Will Robinson was.
Danger,
in short,
danger,
Will
Will Robinson.
But you can see he's walked into this room and he's got most of the people that are connected or their relatives were the Santa Fe ring and all of his enemies. So he's basically just walked into a room, like a hostile room. So in short, the private meeting had developed into a media circus. Badly frightened, Brushy apparently suffered a small stroke, and when the questioning began, he failed miserably. However, the men asking the questions seemed to treat the affair with something as a joke and asked primarily only meaningless questions, which were documented. And some of the questions they asked were how many girlfriends he had, did he enjoy stealing livestock? They just weren't taking it seriously. He completely forgot basic information about himself, and when he was asked a serious question regarding the past of Billy the Kid, he forgot that as well, stating he felt ill. He was eventually taken to another room to lay down. Shortly thereafter, Governor Mabry made an announcement that he was not going to pardon Brushy because he did not believe him to be Billy the Kid. Disappointed, Morrison took Brushy to a local doctor, Stan Lloyd, and when he was well enough, he took him home to Hicko. In Hicko, Brushy was re-examined by Dr. W.F. Hafer and told to get as much rest as possible. In short, after this event and after this stroke, Brushy died 30 days later of a heart attack.
Wow.
And just got more and more ill on the decline from this meeting. So, and you know, you got to think about it. I'm jumping ahead a little bit now, but you know, if you're going to go down the skeptic route of saying, you know, well, I don't believe this guy at all, you got to ask yourself the question: why would he do it? Because this was a man who was still had a warrant out for him for murder, and so if he proved that he was him and the governor didn't give him a pardon, he could have then been imprisoned, you know, for being guilty, for being Billy the Kid who never came to justice. So
I'll give you one reason. I'll give you one possible reason.
Yeah.
And this is just me talking. Off the top of my head, not knowing anything, he could have been friends with Billy the Kid and wanted to make their enemies feel like they never got him after all, as a kind of long-term posthumous revenge.
I mean, that's, I guess, you know, if you're being open to all angles, yeah, that is possible. But I think, you know, again, the reason why I brought this to the table is because now there's so much evidence that because, you know, William Morrison did a great job. He eventually ended up writing a book that was called Billy the Kid, the real life. And then Daniel Edwards, who wrote this book back in 2007, has continued that investigation, and a lot of other people have researched it and researched a lot of details with the improvement of photographic technology, and a lot of photos of Bushy Bill throughout the rest of his life after the days of Billy the Kid, and making analysis comparison to the original tintype of Billy the Kid, and lots of other details that have been proven by historians, because again, this is now another split for historians, because there are certain historians that have supported, Morrison and supported Danielson, avid campaigners for the fact that Bushy Bill was Billy the Kid. So, it has split a lot of people.
The other thing is, Billy the Kid was really well liked, wasn't he? He was really well liked with the people that he met. He dressed quite a lot like some of his Mexican friends, with the jumpers and things. A lot of the Mexican young lads at that time dressed a lot like Billy. And, he was even friends with like Native Americans in Camp Sumner as well. He was just, he had the, what do you call it? The it factor. He had charisma.
Yeah,
and people liked him. The people that met him liked him, and were very loyal to him. And who knows? Basically, Pat Garrett was a dodgy fucker, wasn't he? Basically,
Well, I'm gonna continue to sort of give you some evidence for Bushy Bill, but then what I want to do is I actually want to forget about Bushy Bill for a minute, and I just want to go into the evidence that Pat Garrett killed Billy the Kid. I want to dive into what evidence is there that supports that Pat Garrett killed Billy the Kid.
If he had killed a Mexican kid who kind of looked like Billy and was wearing the same kind of clothes, and is he going to turn around and tell people, oh, God, I just killed this innocent kid, or is he going to go and take the fame of killing the renegade Billy the Kid and all the applause and, everything that comes with that, knowing that Billy's going to go way underground now and never pop his head up again because he doesn't want it shut off. It's easy to see how that's believable, I think.
So I just a couple more points that are just really great pieces of evidence.
Oh, and hi Tabby, by the way.
Bushy Bill's claim. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm actually going to go through a few more things that kind of, don't go in Bushy Bill's favor. But
have you got some photos? We haven't seen any photos of him. Have you got photos?
Do you want to bring some up? Oh, I've got some photos. But I thought that could be something that you could do because it's easy to. Hold on.
Well, I've only from like a Google page,
It's okay. I'll get some up. Should have done that earlier. So I've got a nice picture of Bushy Bill with William Morrison, who was the probate investigator that supported him to try and get his pardon. And was the writer of Billy the Kid, the real.
What do you think in live chat world? I mean, I don't know if
you
guys know anything about it, but even from what you've heard, what do you think? Was Bushy Billy or not? Let us know what you think.
That picture's ready to share, and I'll share some others of Pat Garrett in a little bit. I have got some photo analysis to do of not Pat Garrett, sorry, Bushy Bill Roberts.
Look at those ears, man.
Yeah, look at those ears. I've got another picture of him where he's got his full mustache at the age of when so it's a better close up of those two guys. Let me just stop sharing that one and then share this one. So again, this is just a different picture of Will Morrison and Bushy Bill. Ready to share, Monte. Yeah, so you're starting to get a little bit of an idea of what Bushy Bill looked like at 90. But here's an image of him when he was, I think the first one was taken between, I want to say, 1895, and then the other one was taken in the early 1900s. But stop sharing that one and then share the next one. Next one's ready to share. So this is, and it's this picture that's on the left-hand side that's the one that's been heavily analyzed against the original tintype. And they've done a lot of, there's been several different big analyses. Most recent one was FBI facial recognition, which came out at 97%. Both that one and a picture of him at his age when he died, or when he came forward to Morrison. So when he was like 89/90. It was also, I think, analyzed in, I want to say 1989 or 1991. And that,
Are those both the same guy?
Yeah.
Wow.
But this is the one that's definitely.
They don't look like the same guy. That's weird.
I don't think that is the, well, that's actually, other than my ones that are in my photo analysis, that's the only ones that I've got at the moment. But yeah, bring up the back the other one, because I think that's the most common sort of picture. So while I carry on talking about him, you can have this one in the background.
I tell you another picture I found. I don't know where this comes from, but Frontier Times, Billy the Kid. There's another photo that comes up. I don't know what this photo is. Well, I'm going to show you, see if you recognize it. You recognize this?
Yeah, I have seen that one before. I think that's one of the ones that have definitely been proven not to be him.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I've got a picture of some of them, because there's a guy who's done a really great analysis of it, and I've got it embedded in a document here so that I can show you guys some of that work. Done some clever stuff. So, just lastly, last few bits of evidence that support Brushy Bill Roberts. In Brushy's possessions, he had a very old scarf that he claimed to have gotten from Delavina Maxwell after he was captured at Stinking Springs and brought to Fort Sumner. He said he gave Delavina the tintype of himself, and she gave him the scarf. This really did happen, but only posse member Jim East knew of it, and he only spoke of it in a letter he wrote to fellow lawman Charlie Siringo. So up until that point, that was the only evidence, as one man writing to another man explaining this. But Brushy told this to William Morrison, and obviously William Morrison saw the scarf. Brushy said that he went to trial. His first indictment was for the murder of Buckshot Roberts, and that he was represented by Ira Leonard. He also said that Leonard was able to get the case thrown out. This is true, but very, very few researchers knew this back during the time Brushy made his claim back in 1950. This has been found out afterwards, that it was actually true. Nobody knew it, but when he went to trial, instead of the killing of Sheriff Grady, he was actually indicted for the killing of Buckshot Roberts, but nobody knew that. I mentioned that 3 surviving friends of Billy the Kid met with Brushy Bill separately. Brushy talked with them about events from his past as Billy the Kid, and all 3 signed affidavits attesting to the fact that Billy the Kid was Brushy Bill. I mentioned the 2 brothers earlier on. They were key figures in New Mexico, in Texas at the time, or somewhere, and due to the fact that they wanted to avoid any publicity, they agreed that it was Billy the Kid, but they wouldn't sign the affidavits. Jesse Evans and Joe Hines, who was Jesse Evans, confirmed to Morrison that Brushy Bill was the kid. Bob Young, a native of Round Rock, Texas, visited Hamilton, Texas in 1930 and first met Brushy Bill. The two became friends, and Brushy informed Young that he would like to accompany him on his return to Round Rock. When the time came for Young to return home, Brushy regretfully said he couldn't accompany him since his wife was sick. Still, Brushy asked Young if he could look up his old friend, Jimmy McDaniels, a former member of the Jesse Evans gang and veteran of the Lincoln County War, who also lived in Round Rock. And Brushy went on to tell Young that when he found McDaniels, he simply told him the kid says hello. And when Young returned to it, and when he said that to him, this guy's face went completely white and he looked really badly frightened. This one's really, really interesting. One day in 1945, so 5 years before Brushy came forward, Brushy was walking down a Hicko street. An old lawman named Henry Anthony and his sons were also on the street. And when Anthony saw Brushy, he jumped up and yelled at Brushy, calling him Billy Bonnie, and told him to throw up his hands. When his sons calmed him down, Anthony said that Brushy was the kid. He swore for the rest of his life that Brushy was the kid. In 1990, the famous tintype of Billy the Kid was a purported photo of the kid at age 12, and a photo of Brushy at age 14, and a photo of Brushy at age 19 were analysed by the Acton-Brovick photo study. The study used the most advanced photo comparison equipment around, as well as the best scientists. The photo purported to be a 12-year-old Billy, the kid, was determined not to be him. The photo of 14-year-old Brushy was a close match for the tintype. The photo of Brushy at age 90 had a 93% match of the famous tintype. The missing 7% can be explained due to the age and the dental work, so said Dr. Brovick and Dr. Acton. Brushy Bill had each and every scar Billy was said to have had and that had been documented over his lifetime. The other thing as well is that when you look at the tintype of Billy the Kid, he's got buck teeth, right?
Mm.
And when you look at Brushy Bill, he doesn't have buck teeth. But that's because in the 1930s, he had dental work.
Mm.
He had to have them removed and had to have dentures put in. But Morrison saw that he kept the two teeth in a jar beside his bedside. So Morrison had seen the teeth that he had kept as well. So evidence against Brushy Bill Roberts being Billy the Kid. Brushy claimed that throughout
but just before you get into that, some chats in live. So Wookie thinks out the two photos that was shown earlier on, the first one was from looks like it was from the 1950s. Mickey thinks he does look similar because of the ears. Wookie thinks there's more evidence for Billy the Kid than there was for Jesus. That's true. I mean, there's zero contemporary evidence for Jesus, none whatsoever. Yes, and Billy's story is much more exciting. Oh, it is, isn't it? Yes. They didn't have guns back then, as Wiki points out. That is true. Did you know that Jesus as well wasn't really called Jesus?
It's called Jesus.
Eh? No, it was called Yeshua.
Yeah, I did know that.
In the Hebrew Bible, which what they would have taught at the time, he was called Yeshua. And that was translated into Greek. And then when they translated it into Greek, they translated it as Lesu. And then Lesu got translated into Jesus when it got translated into English. But actually, if we were to translate the Hebrew to English now, Yeshua would have become Joshua. So Jesus is actually called Joshua. So there you go. It's not actually called Jesus. Fun fact.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I was going to go through some evidence that goes against Brushy Bill. No, it's fine. So Brushy claimed that throughout 1871 and 1874, he left the care of Catherine McCarty a few times to visit his biological father, James Roberts, in Texas, and ended up staying with him for a total of 2 years. However, there exists no contemporary evidence that the real Billy the Kid ever left the care of Catherine McCarty, especially for so long a time period. However, straight away with this one, I'll come back with a straight argument that there is so little documentation of that time period of his life that how anybody could use that as an argument is just a little bit on the straining side. When retelling his story, Brushy did make several historical errors. Although a good portion of these dealt with events and facts that were questionable in the first place and therefore dubious, i.e. Brushy saying that he was present at Tunstall's funeral when it was very possible the real Billy the Kid wasn't, or Brushy saying that it was Fred Wyatt who was shot by Billy Matthews during the Brady assassination, not Jim French, when contemporary sources differ as to who the wounded regulator was. There were some that were definitely wrong. Brushy also claimed that after he fled Silver City in 1875, up until 1877, he basically traveled over the entire West, Arizona, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Oregon, making a living as a bronc rider. However, although documentation of Billy the Kid's life during this period is sparse, like I said, the documentation does not exist that seems to indicate that he spent all his time in Arizona operating as a horse and saddle thief. Well, they've just said it in that sentence that the information is sparse. So they've got documentation and proof that he was in Arizona, but that's not to say he couldn't have been in Montana, Wyoming, and Nebraska and Oregon as well. Brushy Bill had a well-known association with J. Frank Dalton, a proven false Jesse James claimant. Although this is technically not evidence against Brushy's own claim, it does cast a serious shadow of doubt on his own credibility. Now, again, I just want to jump straight in and correct that one. That one's bullshit. He wasn't a good friend of J. Frank Dalton. He was at an event where J. Frank Dalton was being interviewed by the press as part of his claim of being the outlaw Jesse James. But he's even interviewed by press that are there, and he doesn't make any revelation to the fact that he's Billy the Kid. He also lies about certain dates about his birth, which is common with somebody who's trying to evade detection of being that person. But he didn't make. There was umpteen amount of reporters and journalists at this event, and not one of them wrote that he claimed that he was a friend of J. Frank Dalton, and he wasn't.
It's like I always say that I'm a friend of the English comedian Mel Goodrich, just because I had breakfast sat next to her in Bristol once.
Exactly.
We all sat next to each other.
You know, things can be interpreted in such a bad way to shine the right or wrong light. And obviously the most overriding thing that goes against proven Brushy Bill is that Sheriff Pat Garrett said that he killed Billy the Kid, and Deputy John Poe and Deputy Thomas McKinney and the vast majority of everyone else who claimed to have seen the body of the man Garrett killed agreed to this. Now, again, we'll come into some details about how many people actually saw the body. And answer questions regarding Brushy Bill Roberts. If Brushy was not really Billy the Kid, then why did he come forward and claim that he was? Obviously, you've given one theory, Monte. It seems unlikely that he came forward in order to achieve fame, as other claimants had in the past, due to the way he and Morrison insisted upon secrecy in their dealings with government Maybury. Also, it would have been insanely foolish for Brushy to claim that he was Billy, who still technically had a sentence of death hanging over him, and basically put himself at Maybury's mercy.
He was Brushy 90, though. He had very little to lose at that point,
If Brushy was not Billy the Kid, why did he not go along with the traditional origin of Billy the Kid, so that he was born in November 23, 1859, and that he was born in New York, and that his real name was Henry McCarty, and that his mother was Catherine McCarty? Historians know, or thought they knew this to be true. If he was, such an expert and knew so many historical details about the Lincoln County War and other events, why did he change those events? Because I definitely think it was him trying to put the record straight on some mislaid details which have led to a catastrophic kind of that Catherine McCarty wasn't his mother, that he wasn't born in New York. I mean, even from a historical history point of view, as I mentioned at the beginning, where all of that came from a documented history, the status quo history, it says that he may have been born in New York, but he didn't go along with that storyline and created a new one. So he obviously came to know the traditional history one way or another of the kid. So what would have been his motive in saying that he was born in Texas and that Catherine McCarthy was his half aunt? And finally, to end the same note that C.L. Sonnerson did in Alias Billy the Kid, C.L. Sonnerson is a historian. If Bushy Bill is not Billy the Kid, then who was he? So, whatever you believe, Roberts' credibility grows with each passing investigation into the past and his recorded statements. In addition to the aforementioned photo comparison study and Roberts' stunning revelations regarding the history and geography of the time and place and genealogy around in a Bible among Robert's possessions showed family members with the names Bonnie, McCarthy, and Antrim, also aliases of the outlaw. Those people who insisted on preserving the historical status quo offer various criticisms. Billy the Kid was right-handed while Roberts was left-handed. The Kid spoke fluent Spanish and Roberts did not. Deputies John Poe and Thomas Kit McKinney concurred with Pat Garrett that the man shot and killed on July 14th, 1881 was Billy the Kid. And Poe's published narrative agrees with Garrett's, and then according to Roberts' niece, William Henry Roberts was actually Oliver P. Roberts, whose life is documented and shows that he could not have been the famous outlaw. The truth is that Roberts was ambidextrous. Roberts spoke fluent Spanish.
What was he?
At various ambidextrous.
Ah.
He spoke fluent Spanish at various times in his lives. Deputy Poe and McKinney, who accompanied Pat Garrett and were there at the killing of Billy the Kid, both stated Sheriff Garrett did not kill Billy the Kid. We're going to come to that. That's a really important fact. The Poe's narrative contradicts Garrett's on several major points. So I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to jump in straight away. Pat Garrett wrote a book called The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid. It was written in part by another guy called Ashton, who was another deputy who was like a semi-journalist who was riding along with him on the hunt for Billy the Kid. He was the one who primarily wrote it. It didn't come out until 2 years after Billy's death. John Poe, Deputy John Poe, who was the government man, actually released his report and his book before Pat Garrett, and the two books do not the details in the books do not align. There's things where they both tell the story really differently, and in John Poe's story, he says at one point that he said to Garrett, "Are you sure you've killed the right person? This doesn't look like the description." So there's all these interesting facts. Continuing with Bushy Bill Roberts, William Henry Roberts had no nieces and often used the alias Oliver L. Roberts, never Oliver P. Roberts, who was a cousin of a man often misidentified as William Henry by careless researchers. So there's all these facts that fly around that try and discredit Bushy Bill, and they're not even true. He didn't even have any nieces. So, yeah, really, really interesting. But what I'm going to do, because time is getting on, I'm going to skip the photo analysis of Bushy Bill and some of the stuff that's happened there. I would really encourage you. There's some stuff which is done. Well, oh God, no, I really want to show you. But basically,
show away.
Hold on 2 seconds. Let me try.
You're never shy in showing stuff, G. So why stop now?
I just want to show this one photo of all the analysis that's been done.
Yeah, everybody in chat wants to see your stuff. Or pictures, I mean.
Hold on. How do you...
Wookie says that it's a vocal tradition in his town that a bar and a man was known as one of the stormtroopers from the 1977 Star Wars, the original Star Wars film. He was the stormtrooper guy. Years later, he talked to his son, who he went to school with, and he told him it was all bullshit. Yeah.
You what? Sorry, what's that?
You get them, Wookie. You always get them.
All right. Right, I'm just trying to think. What do I need to do to share this? Is it in a window? Yes, it's in a window. Perfect. Right, I'm taking this from a website that somebody's done where they've just done a whole investigation. The website is just about this investigation. Is it come up on the screen?
Yeah, crikey.
Yeah. So this is a full body picture of Brushy Bill against the tintype of Billy the Kid, showing that his proportions are really, really similar. Even his ears, the way his shoulders sit, because Billy was reported to have heavy shoulders, and you can see that in the tintype where they're kind of very low and sunken. Let me just change screen so I can move the screen. And then there's one that goes on to the wrists. This one's really good. So, and there's a doctor that's actually done a study on this because it's a very rare condition. Can you see that on the screen enough? I can't zoom any further because it's coming from a website.
Do you not hold the control key down?
The top
control key and mouse scroll.
Oh, there we go. Let me just then. How do I move the
scroll button on? That's it. There you go.
Yeah, no, I got it. And then control and in, and then move the. Right. Oh no, that's not going to get on the screen altogether.
That'll do. Yeah, we kind of get the idea.
Okay. So the top hand is from the tintype. The bottom hand is from the picture of Brushy Bill. And they both have this condition that, again, you'd have to go to this website and read it. But this doctor describes this condition. It's like 1 in, I don't know, 2,000 people have it or something. But it shows that he had these really big hands and small wrists, exactly the same as Billy the Kid and exactly as shown in the tintype. But this guy who wrote this article went on to do more analysis, which is really clever. And what he did is he mapped out the tintype dimensions of the eyes. Yeah. And all these ones are proven. You can see in the comments that they're proven not to be him. So the first one on the top right there is John Miller. He's somebody who, again, came forward to claim that he was Billy the Kid and was disproven. But his features don't match. But then when you go down to, this is Brushy Bill at age 14, all of his details match the exact measurements of Billy the Kid's tintype. Do you see that at the bottom? Yeah, it's a really interesting website that somebody's put together. They've, documented all their sources as well. But yeah, really,
I think that's a little bit pseudo-y though, isn't it? Because if you look down at the camera like that, the distance are greater. But if I look at the camera like that, the differences are a lot narrower. So it depends on.
Yeah,
you have to
I guess,
take into account whether they're looking dead on the camera or not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Look, I just wanted to use this as an example to show you that more has been done, to kind of the analysis that was done by the study by Acton and whoever, and then the study that was done by FBI and Kodak with the facial recognition. The results of that, of Brushy Bill versus the tintype, are the ones that I'm interested in for sure, because they're backed up with, really strong scientific process. This is obviously some guy who's just put his own website together. But what I felt was interesting and why I wanted to show it is because it's more than just his facial features. It's his bloody hands. It's his whole full body matches with the picture of the tintype. So going back to your theory of, he was a friend of his. Well, if he was a friend of his, he was a friend of his that had certainly much of his, body type and the way he looked, etc. But yeah. So I'm going to fast forward this next bit. I'm not going to go through all the detail that I had for the Pat Garrett, to prove why Pat Garrett didn't kill Billy the Kid. What I'm going to do is just give you the top line details that should hopefully, and again, I would urge and encourage anybody to look forward. If you want to reach out to me through our community thread on the channel and say, can you share that? Where did you get that information? Or where do I go for this? By all means, do that. I'm passionate to share this because I think more people should look into this. But here's the top lines for why Pat Garrett didn't kill Billy the Kid. no death certificates were ever produced for the killing of Billy the Kid. Absolutely zero. And that wasn't even uncommon at the time. There were affidavits that were written, but they were signed by people who weren't even in the location at the time. In addition to no death certificate ever being logged, and it's not because the death certificates have been lost. People were looking for it like 10 years after Billy the Kid was apparently died. Before we even got into the 1900s, people were looking for it. There is no, at Santa Fe Public Library where all of these documents or any documents would have been kept, there is no death certificates, never have been, for Pat Garrett killing Billy the Kid. I mentioned earlier that Pat Garrett and Deputy John Poe, who attended him, who was a representative of the New Mexico government, their books and their statements don't match, which is really, really suspicious. Some notable figures at the time suspected Garrett almost straight away, and suspicions were featured and written by authors and some historians at the time, not like later, not recently, literally in the 1980s. There were people and historians and authors that came forward questioning that Pat Garrett didn't kill Billy the Kid. However, much of the authors after the death, but much of the information we are discussing has been brought to light and traced by historians and authors after the death of Bushy Bill Roberts, especially information that accounts for that have been gathered from records of the time or witnesses during the events whose comments were noted and passed down through family regarding the burial of Billy the Kid, and that there are several witnesses that testify that the person that was buried, because only two people other than supposedly Garrett, John Poe, and McKinney saw the body, were the two people that buried him, which it was a gentleman named Graham and somebody else. And they've written and been recorded as saying that it was a guy with a beard and that he was dark skin of a Mexican type. And that's their only description. In Bushy Bill's account of the evening, he basically says that he was staying at a friend of his, Jesus's. That's where he was hiding out, but they had run out of food.
He was staying at Jesus's?
Yeah. Or whatever his name was.
That's Jesus.
Yeah. It's Jesus. He was called Jesus.
Okay, we found Jesus finally.
Yeah, he's Mexican. So, yeah. Or Hispanic, I should say. But they had run out of food, so Billy Barlow and Billy the Kid then decided to go into Fort Sumner to try and get some food, because they were fed up with eating the beans or whatever it was that was at Jesus' house. Whilst they were there, Billy Barlow asked if their friend had any meat. He said no, but Maxwell's just brought in some fresh meat. Billy apparently said to Barlow, no, don't go over to Maxwell's. That's one place that Garrett would know to look for me. Too risky, don't go there. He ignored him. He went there, and supposedly it was Billy Barlow that was killed. The body was never seen by, as I said, anybody that was official that could say. And the thing that is going to astound you now is that the deputies that attended with Pat Garrett, John Poe, and McKinney had never, ever seen Billy the Kid before in person. Didn't know, only by description. And at the time, it's not like they had that tintype to look at or photographs kicking around. It was just what people said that he looked like. They had never actually seen him the night before. And it's believed that that's why Garrett chose to take them with him rather than the rest of his posse, because they had never seen him. It's very odd, extremely odd. Historians and also lawmen that are still alive have commented about the fact that around the time, it would have been common behavior for, first of all, and it sounds horrid, but common behavior would have been that Pat Garrett would have had a photograph with the dead Billy the Kid, that he would have had photographs with several other people, that it would have been an open casket for people to see it. Basically, the story is, and most of the facts show, that the body was put into the casket, sealed, and buried by the next morning. And as I said, it wasn't even given a proper stone. It was just given a wood thing in it, and was buried by a river that flooded in 1906 and just washed away whatever body was there. Later on, quite a few years down, when a lot of tourists have been visiting Fort Sumner, a lot of the locals at the time used to say to them, actually, it's not, it's a Mexican and Charlie Baldry buried there. And that's what they used to say to them, because a lot of the local people knew that it was Billy Barlow that killed, and they've gone on record, and it's been passed down through their families, and other people have come forward that are relatives there, said they told me that it, you know, and they were in on the know. The big question is if this was the case, was Garrett and Billy the Kid in, you know, had they arranged this together, or was it just happenstance that Pat Garrett screwed up and accidentally killed a Mexican kid who was innocent, because Billy Baldry wasn't even an outlaw, wasn't wanted for anything. And so he just panicked and said it was Billy the Kid, and Billy the Kid used that opportunity to make his escape out of New Mexico. I don't know. But the one thing that history has and research has started to show us is that the friendship between Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid is seemingly quite strong. And this is what's interesting about these photos coming forward, because some of these photos are more and more showing that it's Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett in the same photo. So more and more time spent together and hanging out. So who knows? I forgot to mention what I wanted you guys to be the jury on. I did say that I wanted you to be the jury, but I wanted you just to vote on whether you think Pat Garrett killed Billy the Kid or didn't kill Billy the Kid. Not whether Bushy the Bill is Billy the Kid, but just whether Pat Garrett killed Billy the Kid or not. Put it in comments where you think he did.
I'm
sorry,
Garrett?
I'm sorry, I've had to rush through the whole section of Pat Garrett and some of the evidence that goes to show. Another really big important one is that history and documentation will show us that Pat Garrett was paid $500 up front to hunt for Billy the Kid, and he was promised $500 after he produced him either in court or dead. And history now can document that Pat Garrett never received that reward. He actually put a claim in for it, and it was denied by the Santa Fe ring and the government that had recruited him because of the lack of documentation and evidence that he supplied. He never received the reward for killing the Billy Kid. There was never any death certificate for Billy the Kid. Anybody that was here at the event, the only person that knew the full identity of Billy the Kid was Pat Garrett, and John Poe and McKinney had never met the guy. And that, you know, if you go through and read John Poe's account, it makes a lot of sense about what happened, because he said he saw this guy coming with this knife. He didn't really recognize him, so he asked who he was, and he said he was X person, that he was going to get some meat. So because John Poe wasn't sure whether he was Billy the Kid or not, he didn't do anything. And then Billy the Kid went into the room, and then he heard shots, and he was like, oh, is Pat shot him? I don't think that is Billy the Kid. All this kind of stuff. And all of this is written up by him, all these thoughts that he had. But let us know in that chat, where do you think, did Pat Garrett kill Billy the Kid?
I put a poll up. Feel free to vote. Let us know.
Cool.
Why can't I get that to go right?
Oh, I voted wrong. I accidentally just voted wrong.
I can't do anything about that now.
Annoying. Where's the poll gone? Well, we know that there's one vote that's wrong anyway, so...
Well, we're 50-50 at the moment. Yeah, we're 50-50. And I think that's probably...
What's Wookie asking there? So was it periodicals, book advertising and movies romanticizing the Wild West, which helped put Billy the Kid on the American myth and legend? No, as I don't know when you came into the show, Wookie, but what I was outlining is that it was because the states are so huge, and in the east was very, by that point, what we would like to call civilized. It was quite built up. It was industrial. They had railway. They had cities like New York and stuff like that. But the frontier of the West was still really, just barren, small. A lot of areas like New Mexico at this time and date when Billy Kid was roaming it had a small few towns, like one big town, Santa Fe, a few small towns like Lincoln Town. Albuquerque may have been considered town at the time, but most of it was then just cattle ranches spread out, sparse, little Hispanic towns and villages and areas. But it was, and there's no rail, only going into Santa Fe, so not around the rest of the New Mexico County. So, it was very wild, and it was, a lot of these towns didn't even have what we would determine as definite law. Lincoln County certainly did, but it was corrupt. They were all corrupt. It was all about money, and all these politicians and, notable people were all corrupted by the money and the people that were coming into the frontier and trying to develop it and make their own business out of it. People like John Chisholm, who was a big merchant farmer in New Mexico at the time, the Murphy and Dolan Merchant House. It was just so what was happening is in the East, they're featuring all of these articles. The word is getting about that, this thing has happened in New Mexico, and this guy has escaped prison, and, he's done this and he's shot these many people. But it's a bit like Chinese whispers because of the way that communication worked in the time. There was things like telegram for sure, but only like Santa Fe area of New Mexico at this time would have got telegrams. You wouldn't have had probably a telegram office in Lincoln County. It was too still rough and just frontier-like. So, the way that news got spread was very much like Chinese whispers, and details and things were changed. They lend, one of the things that they do well in the Young Guns films is they do lend to the fact that they're talking about a newspaper article where it pictures Billy the Kid, and it's got a picture of Dick Brewer, who's not even Billy the Kid. And that is true, that there was a lot of misinterpretations of what he actually looked like. He was around the time in a lot of the dime novels, he was made out to be this really dashing, handsome, looking guy, when in actual fact he was a good looking guy, apparently, according to a lot of sources, but not, that kind of crazy, dashing good looking. Couple of other interesting things is that, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, yeah, Wookie says no, but he doesn't know. We're currently at 60-40. 60 yes, 40 no. I think it's difficult to say. I mean, we're never going to know unless some evidence, categorically comes forward and says one way or the other.
Well, see, that's 60%. It's got my accidental where I hit yes.
Oh, yeah. So no. We're probably still at about a 50-50 then, maybe.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
News was on horseback, Kevin. That's right. So it was getting misinterpreted. So Billy the Kid's fame was already happening around the time that he was doing these things. That fame, I guess, has only just continued to grow over, the last century or so. And a lot of it, I guess, because of the mystery behind the man. Yeah, because a lot of his, here's the thing. You read a lot of history about Billy the Kid. If you went onto Wikipedia right now, it would probably say something along the lines of, he killed 21 men. The truth of it is, it's more likely that between the ages of birth and 1881 and supposedly being killed by Pat Garrett, documents probably tell us that he only really killed 11 people, not 21.
Well, Wikipedia actually reckons around 8.
Yeah, so the number is not 21, and this is where I'm giving examples of how things were exaggerated.
Oh, some people exaggerate up to the 30s.
Yeah, but however, if you think for a moment that Bushy Bill was Billy the Kid and served in the Mexico Revolutionary War,
well, then maybe he did kill a lot.
Probably killed a lot more people, for sure. But Billy the Kid, and what history and documents tell us, more like 8. Between 8 and 11, there are a couple that are under dispute. But yeah, sure, it's a good example of just how a lot of the things about him were over exaggerated and misinterpreted.
I am going to end the poll because there's no more votes coming in. So there you go. We got 60 yes with a total of 5 votes.
But, you know, here's the crazy thing for me, and this is why I absolutely love this story, and this has given it new life for me, because I already loved the story. I was already romanced by the story before I even knew anything about the whole Bushy Bill thing. But reading this book, like, if you go into the detail and how much detail Roberts goes through, it's got all the interviews. I was going to play, obviously, I don't know if you still want me to play it, Monty. I've got that audio footage of Bushy Bill Roberts talking to a reporter. So if we do finish this podcast with a lot of you thinking I've put the case forward really well, and you think that Bushy Bill might have been Pat Garrett, and might have been Billy the Kid, sorry. You know, on this audio recording, you would be listening to the voice of Billy the Kid, which would just be amazing if that was the case. Do you want me to play it?
We'll play a little clip, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a video file, so this has come from...
I voted no, by the way. I don't think Pat Garrett did kill Billy the Kid. Again, well, I don't know, but I don't... I find it easy to believe he didn't, and I'll go through why after we've just listened to this clip.
Yeah.
By the name of Maury Davidson, and he had come there to cover the birthday party of the man who claimed to be Jesse James, J. Frank Dalton. Now,
I was talking about this earlier.
Don't worry about it. The short story is that in 1950, an old man named Brushy Bill Roberts went in front of the governor of New Mexico and asked for a pardon for crimes committed as Billy the Kid. The governor chose not to act on the pardon, said that he didn't think the man was Billy the Kid. The old man had a stroke in the governor's office and died 30 days later. Yeah. For a lot of people, that ended the story of Brushy Bill Roberts, but over the years, more and more evidence continues to come in that seems to indicate that the old man was telling the truth and that he really was a notorious Wild West outlaw. Back in 2014, I wrote a book about it called Billy the Kid, an Autobiography, and because of that book, I've been featured on national television, including the History Channel, the Travel Channel, and some nationally syndicated radio programs. Now back to this audio recording. This audio recording was actually given to me so that I could provide it to the Travel Channel when I appeared on Mysteries at the Museum with Don Wildman. We were looking for something unique to share on the show, and I knew a gentleman that had this audio recording, and he agreed to provide it to me so that we could broadcast it on the show, and it did air on that show a few years ago. After that time, I actually found the gentleman who had the original recordings that were given to him by the journalist that interviewed Brushy Bill. And this was the gentleman that gave it to the guy who had given it to me for the show. So I only say this to say that recording is out there. Now this one you're about to hear is one that I had digitally remastered. And so I think it's a lot easier for you to hear and understand, and I hope you like it. So I'm excited for you to listen to this for a few reasons. And if you don't mind, I'd like to call your attention to 3 quick things.
Number one, I just wanted to listen to the clip.
You may notice that Brushy Bill Roberts does not claim to be Billy the Kid. Now this interview occurred on September the 6th, 1949. He doesn't come out. Brushy's was to claim he was much younger than he.
I just wanted to explain because this is where it's frustrating with things like this, because there's so many things that people will say to discount certain things, like the whole him, but then they don't want to listen to the explanation of what explains why people are lying. But let's try and get. I thought I had already cut this.
He later came out and said he was. I don't recall.
Well,
but I'm sorry, just because you take a picture with someone doesn't mean you're in their gang.
That doesn't matter.
Thanks for watching.
Brushy Bill, this is September the 6th, 1949. My name is Maurice Davidson, and we are here at Merrimack Tavern at Stanton, Missouri. And as you well know, yesterday we all participated in celebrating the 102nd birthday of Jesse James. I understand that you're an old friend of his, and I'd like to have you verify. You say you knew him 78 years. As Jesse James. I knew him 6 years as Frank Golden. In other words, after the supposed death of Jesse James 67 years ago, he went under the name of Frank Dalton. But you know him previous to that time, didn't you? Yes. For a number of years. You
Let him talk.
associated with him. And you positively identify the Frank Dalton as the one and only Jesse James.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you give us any little incidents of things that happened before the supposed death?
He come to my mother's house when I was about 7-year-old. This arm just about shot off. And stayed there 6 weeks. His mother knocked his arm and he got well. And Frank bought him there, and Frank taken him away from that too when he went away.
In other words, from the time that you were 7 years old,
I knowed him ever since.
You've known him ever since, way before he was supposed to have been killed, and also.
Anyway, it's a very, very old recording, recorded on very, very old equipment, so it's not great. But it was really interesting. What I could make out there is that he was saying, no, I've not known him for 78 years as Jesse James. I've known him 78 years as Frank Dalton. He was there to testify that he knew him as Frank Dalton. But, yeah. But I just thought it would be interesting if Brushy Bill was Billy the Kid. You've got a recording there where you're listening to Billy the Kid's voice, which is insane to think that could actually be a thing.
The reason I don't think Garrett killed him is just because of what Garrett was like after the effect and what we knew the type of guy Pat Garrett was, because he went on to, be a serial liar, basically. He lied about how much money he had. He lied to banks. He lied to the President of the United States.
Who's this? Sorry?
Pat Garrett. He went and met the President of the United States and arranged to have and this is Roosevelt. He had he had photos taken of what President Roosevelt thought was cattle ranchers, like prominent cattle ranchers and things, to raise their profile and to get them grants and things. But these people turned out to be owners of brothels. Because he couldn't stay away from brothels and was addicted to prostitutes. So he got these brothel owners and took them to soirees with the president and got their photos taken and to raise their profile. And eventually someone realized this and got the message back to Roosevelt that Garrett was like that. And so he kind of excommunicated him. But then he put a friend of Pat's, George Curry, to replace him as the governor of New Mexico. And then Curry gave Garrett the job of a head of a prison, a prison commissioner in charge of a prison. Santa Fe, I think it's Santa Fe prison, or a prison in Santa Fe. And so that was going to be at least he had a job and he had some redeeming things going on, because his ranch had gone bankrupt and he'd spent all his money on prostitutes. And then he went to visit him to see if he was okay before taking up his position as this commissioner of this prison. And he found him living in a whorehouse with prostitutes. So it was so he lost that job and he died not long after that. So, yeah.
But Pat Garrett?
Yeah.
Pat Garrett was shot.
Yeah, he was shot. Yes, he was
shot by a 21-year-old man.
But yeah, he's just he just couldn't stop lying, could he? And he it just makes me think he was such a messed up guy that just you can make me believe that he didn't really do anything that he claimed to have done pretty much his entire life, really.
I know it's somewhere in my notes, but I can't find it now. But it's really interesting that you just brought up about the president and Garrett, because actually a supporter of Brushy Bill Roberts being Billy the Kid is Truman. And whether that's gone down the line, there's this president book, and whether one president found Garrett as a liar and then has passed it on to another president that this guy is a liar, and then that's given Truman the. But apparently, a supporter of the Bushy Bill Roberts was. I can't find where I put it in my notes though.
What's doing a K2SO? I don't know.
I have no idea.
I'm a Star Trek fan, not a Star Wars fan. Maybe I am a Star Wars fan. I don't know why I said that. I don't want to admit it these days after just watching The Acolyte. But oh, it's bad. That is bad. If you haven't watched it, don't watch it. The Acolyte. Have you seen that?
No,
it's not good. It's not good.
One thing I was going to say, it's just a bit slightly off topic, but still on topic. You can Google the author if you want, Wookie. His name is Daniel A. Edwards, if you want to find out his credentials. But yeah, I assume that this isn't the only book that he's authored. Yeah. But when we were doing the Star Trek review show, what's bad? What do you keep saying is bad?
The Acolyte is bad.
All right. When we were doing the TNG, the Star Trek review show, the other night, and we were talking about it being Patrick Stewart's birthday at 84. I went on a bit of a side thought then, as you guys were talking about that, and I was like, actually, Patrick Stewart, if they decided to make a film out of the Bushy Bill claim and all of that stuff that happened around then, Patrick Stewart would be a perfect person to play him if you put a mustache. Look at the image, and I was just starting to think, oh, if he could do a really good Southern accent, he'd be a good person to put, because he has a sort of similar build as well. So, yeah.
If he talk like this, yes, baby.
Well, from that recording, and bear in mind that recording was taken, I think, 47. So 3 years before he died, so he would have been about 87. And he had quite a high-pitching sounding voice, didn't he? Very much like that. I know the reporter sounded like that as well, but, Billy the Kid was, It's interesting. It's just, I love that thought that, that could have been him. And it'd be interesting to look to see if there's any more. But, it said that Morrison took recordings, and it'd be nice to find out if anything happened to those recordings or if they are somewhere with all of his interviews. But again, I'm going to end up and just finish off again saying that this is a brilliant book. And if you want to delve into this story, if you think that the facts that I've shared, or the information, not facts, sorry, the details that I've shared this evening are not enough for you, then it is only the tip of the iceberg of what's in this book, and enjoying going through and journeying and finding out about Bushy Bill's life and all the exact details. It's all very, very cool. Do I believe that Bushy Bill Roberts, well, let me rewind first. You said that you don't believe that Garrett killed Billy the Kid, right? I voted accidentally. I don't believe that. I 100% don't believe that Garrett killed Billy the Kid.
I can say 100%. I wasn't there. I don't see any evidence one way or the other. I just find it easy to believe he didn't.
Oh, I think
knowing
100%.
That he's a lying little shit.
Do I believe that...
Actually, he wasn't a lying little shit. He was a lying tall shit, because he was very tall.
Do I believe that Bushy Bill Roberts was Billy the Kid? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I want to hopefully I'm going to keep track of it. I would love to be some part of doing more to try and prove that he was. I think it's such an interesting story. It's not the only person. I obviously mentioned Jesse Evans, who had gone by the name of Joe Hines, but it's not the only person from around that time in history that was an outlaw that had kept there, because, Dalton came forward to say that he was Jesse the James, and he was debunked but there was many other outlaws that were believed to be dead, that over the years have come forward and been proven to be them. I just think it was a thing to do with the time, how things were recorded. I also think that Garrett and Billy the Kid were friends, good friends, and they arranged this and sorted it all out. And that's why everything was done so quickly and so out of character and out of the normal patterns of how things were done at the time. So that's my take on it. I hope I've convinced you guys somewhat somewhere towards there, or at least just piqued your interest to go out and find that book or read more about it. But thank you for indulging me.
No, you're very welcome. This is the place where we indulge ourselves in one way or the other. I indulge myself in wine usually, so there's that. I've got to unpack this very important topic though. Wookiee actually liked the Acolyte. Now I've got to work out why. Now he says it's for reasons outside the plot and stuff. So now I'm thinking, is it the acting? The special effects? I don't know. Tell me, Wookiee. I liked it. I will tell you, I liked it because I think it's the first time that I've come across a Star Wars where I thought it was so bad that I actually enjoyed it. When you sometimes see a film that's just so terrible that it's funny, it's funnily bad, that you go, oh my God, I'm actually watching this thing. I kind of enjoyed it from that point of view. No. I need to know, Wookiee, now why you liked it. Wookiee enjoyed the investigative theme of this Monte zone. So, yeah, it's good to know some facts. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Mickey's learnt a lot more about Billy the Kid than he did before we started. So, success. We've been educational, G. Or you have.
Do you know?
I just sat here drinking wine.
Do you know what I'd quickly say to everybody is I mentioned earlier that there's a TV series that's come out right now called blatantly Billy the Kid, and it's had 2 seasons so far, and I've heard on the grapevine that they're going to commission a 3rd and 4th. A bit like Deadwood, because a lot of people didn't realize this, and I'm sorry for you guys that if you're watching at home and thinking, what are they talking about now? Deadwood is a TV program. Deadwood was a real place, however, and one thing that's really great about that program, and it was really awarded well because it was so historically correct. They'd really done their work, both in the way that people spoke, the language that they used, but certain events that happened. And it was a crazy time. A lot of people don't realize that Billy the Kid actually met Wyatt Earp. That's got nothing to do with Deadwood, but, Billy the Kid actually did meet Wyatt Earp at a location in Arizona and tried to front up to Wyatt Earp, actually, and Wyatt Earp didn't bite. So nothing actually happened. But, Deadwood was such a good program because they really, really, thought about keeping it historically correct as much as possible and then filled in the bits in between. Now, this series of Billy the Kid, that's really new, that's just been filmed in the last few years and is out on Amazon. I believe that they've done the same, but they've made a really bad mistake. This has really annoyed me because they've gone into, so it's the first probably depiction of Billy the Kid on the cinema screen or the big screen where they've taken it all the way back to his childhood, like when he was young, and they tried to fill in the gaps to the best history that we know, which is really vague. But when they then get up to Lincoln County and the regulators, they've done it really well. But for some odd and bizarre reason, and I can't even find anything online to explain this, and it's frustrating the living shit out of me, they've not included Doc Skurlock as a character in it at all. So he's not there. And that's really, really stupid because Doc Skurlock was one of the founding regulators.
He was an old guy with a beard, wasn't he?
Yeah. And he was, a key component in the Lincoln War, and he lived and survived. And what's interesting, if you think about it, history will tell you that Dr. Skurlock survived until his elderly years, as I mentioned earlier, in Texas, where he was a manager of a convenience store or something. But, you know, Bushy Bill Roberts was in Texas as well. Maybe they actually knew, and maybe they got to see each other now and then. That would have been cool to think that they got to hook up now and then in secret, undercover. You know, we're not who we say we are, sort of thing. That would have been cool. But
how do they go through the creation of the what are they called? The regulators, without Doc Skurlock then? Because he was kind of like, at that point, he was like their leader, wasn't he? He was like the person that founded the whole thing.
It's really weird because they went to the effort of being historically correct that when Billy the Kid arrives in Lincoln, he initially joins with Jesse Evans and the gang, and actually fights and works for Dolan Murphy, the bad side. In a lot of other films, they just don't predict that, they don't depict that. Sorry, they just act like he was just a big fan of Tunstall and only joined. But he joined Tunstall after, and he had already been fighting for the Murphy Dolan side. And it was just because he was under so much demand. So many, like both sides wanted him because he was just known as brilliant with a gun. And could, you know, draw faster than anybody else. But it wasn't so much about how quickly he drew, but how he could shoot things. He had an amazing aiming ability, both with a rifle and a .44 Colt. Oh, and there's another detail I forgot to tell you. Any witnesses that were witness to the killing of Billy the Kid reported that the person that was killed was found with a Colt 41 on them. Billy the Kid would never be seen dead carrying a 41 Colt. 44. He only ever carried a 44. Yeah. So, but Billy Bowden carried a Colt 41. So again, lots more little different evidence, but got a bit sidetracked there. I can't remember what I was talking about. But yeah, going back to the regulators and this program, they really went into the effort of some things, and I just don't understand why they've just not included Dr. Skurlock. I don't get it. They changed Tunstall a couple of times. So in season 1, he only comes in at the end of the season, and he's a young guy, and then in the second season he's a lot older guy. In truth, again, Tunstall was not too much older than Billy the Kid. He was about 25, 26, was relatively young for being the head of a merchant, but he was, from a rich family back in England, wanted to make his way out into the world and was doing his own thing, but had money behind him to get set up originally. But yeah, he wasn't like Terrence Stamp, who you were talking about earlier. He played Thingy in Superman. Not Terrence Stamp. What's the name of the actor?
Zod.
Is it
Terrence Stamp?
Zod. Is it Terrence? Oh,
it is Terrence Stamp.
Terrence, yeah. In Young Guns, Terrence Stamp plays Tunstall.
How's that funny?
Bad casting.
Small world.
Tunstall wasn't anywhere near that old. You know, in reality at the time.
He went from the Phantom Zone to the Old West.
But, you know, why make a program that goes to so much effort to stay historically right on point and then remove somebody? And so
it's not like another movie studio can have the IP of an historical figure, is it? Because sometimes, like, like Rings of Power don't have hobbits, do they? They have like halflings or something, because they don't. Whilst they have like the rights of some of Tolkien stuff, they don't have the rights to hobbits.
Well, I'd be really surprised if that was the reason.
So they have the old wizard, but they don't mention.
At least Gandalf, they could have somebody in the background acting like that character.
They can't for historical figures like that. I don't think it works that way. So.
But yeah, it's crazy, and because it's frustrated me so much, I've gone online and tried to see if there's an explanation as to why, or that other people have noticed. There's one person that I managed to find that put on Reddit something. Well, actually, it wasn't an original post. It was just a comment on somebody else's post where they went, "Yeah, and where's Doc Skurlock?" But very odd. But hope, yeah, I say. I just continue to be really interested in the subject, and I would like to continue to keep my eyes open for things that because the more of these photographs that appear that are potentially Billy the Kid, and more of them that get proven to comparison against the tintype, and then can be compared against Bushy Bill, it's just things that can continue, especially with the advancement of technology, that can go to prove that he is. The reality is that we'll never be able to get DNA evidence, and because of everything that I said earlier on about whether you want to dispute and argue, because now, funny enough, I was saying to you that everybody gets on top of the Billy the Kid bandwagon. Back in Tehico, Texas, where Bushy Bill died, they now claim that they've got Billy the Kid's graveyard there, and there's all Bushy Billy the Kid museums and Bushy Bill museums there. So they now claim that they were the home place or the death place of Billy the Kid. So, but I guess whatever you believe, it's just a darn interesting story.
Yeah, weird. Wookie likes The Acolyte because it feels like real Star Wars to him. Yeah, music, film, art direction.
Oh, I see what you're talking about now. That crappy the Star Wars series that's on Disney at the moment.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet, so I shouldn't really be saying crappy.
You might like it. Quite often we disagree with these sort of things. So, I think it's crap. You might think it's great. I didn't like Obi-Wan. You like that,
Well, yeah, Obi-Wan's superb. The other thing I would say about this new series that is really good is the guy who plays Billy the Kid. He looks like what I would think Billy the Kid would really look like. There's a couple of times where they capture certain shots of him, and he just so looks like the tintype. So really, really good. So check it out if you haven't.
Does he wear cardigans?
Yeah, they got that correct as well. They did a lot to make it totally feel like they've given it some thought. So I just don't understand. I'm going to continue to look and try and find out, but it may be something that, like, you've just hit the nail on the head. I can't think of why they would have made such a catastrophic decision to move away from known history and documented history and not include him. I just I don't get it.
Yeah, I've seen that, Wookie. Yeah, someone did a fan edit of Obi-Wan and took like a six-part series, is it, or something like that, and edited it down to like a 2.5-hour film. Apparently it's a lot better. I just think it's a flawed concept because you start at a point and end at a point which nothing can happen in, because we know what happens between the end of the prequels and the beginning of the sequels. So nothing can really happen. So we're at exactly the same point at the end of it as we are at the beginning of it. Whatever happens in the middle of it is inconsequential.
I'm gonna reveal something to the audience that you may not know about Monte, but Monte is the typical grumpy old man. He's not quick to adapt to change. When something new comes along,
I don't like change.
It's something that he likes. He's resistant, but sometimes, not all the time. Eventually, somewhere down the line, he does actually start to warm and comes out of that grumpiness.
I warmed to TNG eventually.
Yeah, like that's a really good example. I was right there when, and he was like, "No, never as good as the original series. Never good as
Captain's
the original
bold.
series."
He's a bold old man. Why are we replacing? I know Kirk's getting old, but why are we replacing him with a bold old man? Doesn't make any bloody sense.
Resistant to change. So
why does the bridge look like a Winnebago?
I know. Probably in about 10 years' time, he will be talking about Obi-Wan with a lot of fondness, and he'll be comparing other stuff, saying it's not as good as the original Obi-Wan.
Maybe. We're about to go into Picard, so maybe I'll love Picard this time. I don't know. Maybe I will. I don't know. Who knows?
No. I think there's certain things, especially when it comes to Star Trek, you're caught on a bit of a repeating record.
Yeah. True. We'll find out soon, won't we? Crikey. I'm almost huggable. Almost. Yeah. I do like a hug. I'm quite a huggy guy. Yeah. Right.
Well, Smiler brought that out.
Yeah, Smiler brought out my huggable side. I
I knew him pre-Smiler, and he wasn't that huggy pre-Smiler. And then
no, that is true. I have to say that is all my wife's doing. Yeah, she brought the hugginess out of me. Yeah. Yeah.
I mentioned it on Wednesday when we were doing the Star Trek review. Just wanted to mention it again. I'm going to be working on a G-Star Vault, which is the first time I've done a G-Star Vault.
Very excited by this one as well, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm going to give everybody that's watching tonight a little bit of a sneak peek about what it's about. And I've deliberated whether to do a video about this because it's always very controversial when you're a YouTuber and you're doing YouTube content about a certain category of or subject matter, and then you produce your own stuff. So, like, obviously, we talk a lot about UAPs and UFOs and alien encounters on this channel. So, for me to then claim that I've had an experience or a sighting, it just it makes me think: should I or shouldn't I? The truth is, earlier this year in January, I had a sighting of a UAP. Didn't get any footage, didn't get any photographs. I'm absolutely pissed off that I didn't. However, there's enough within that experience to talk about and discuss. But then recently I was on holiday and in an environment where I wasn't expecting anything to happen or looking for anything. Wasn't looking for anything the first time either. I was just driving home from work. But the second one I got on camera, and I got some footage of it, and there's some other people that have been analyzing it as well. So on this G-Star Vault, I'm going to be on location where the first incident happened and talk you through that and what I saw there to the best of my ability and try and analyze it and investigate in a very logical way. But then for the second incident that happened, and that happened just this month, I've got some footage to share, so I'll be sharing that as in a G-Star Vault way from the studio. So, yeah, location episode and also a studio episode. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys.
Yeah, so it'll be in a G-Star Vault. We'll probably bring it up. We'll talk about it in the next Monte Zone. Yeah, it's going to be fun to see. Quite looking forward to that. If you're completely not fed up with us yet, we have got the TNG review. Oh, no, sorry, it's not TNG review anymore, is it? It's now just the Star Trek review because we're moving on from TNG.
What are you going to call it? Are you just going to get when you get to Picard? Are you just going to continue? And also, I meant to ask you the other night, in terms of the films, are you going to do the canon films as well, or just the
what?
Like the JJ films? Are you going to do them as well? Or not?
Maybe one day.
One day, but not before.
I don't know if I'm going to live long enough because we've got next week we've got Nemesis, so Star Trek 10, the fourth TNG film. That's next Wednesday at 8:00 on this channel, consigning to the vault, and then we're moving on to Picard, the 3 seasons of Picard, and then probably Deep Space Nine, and then Voyager. And then Enterprise, and then maybe the Abrams films. I don't know. When I'm 70 years old, and who knows?
It's
who knows?
Oh, that's very sweet of you to say, Mickey. I really appreciate that. We need more of G back on YouTube.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's nice to hear that. It has been a long time, but it's been it's some of the stuff that's happened between when I sort of stopped YouTube and doing the album. I'm just so glad I did that. And, that's something that I just really wanted to do. And, there's only so much time in life and you can't do everything, right? So now that that's done and all released and out of the way, and doing really well, by the way, I forgot to mention that. Thank you to everyone who, if you have supported with that, but I had a message about 2 weeks ago from my streaming company that I do my label through to say that I'd had over 1,000 streams within the first 30 days, and that's 3 times more than any other project that I've ever released. So it's doing really, really well.
Well done, G.
So I'm really pleased about that. But yeah, I am thinking about getting back into the YouTube thing. Me and Monte, funny enough, this is not definite yet. It's not guaranteed at all. It's just something that we're spitballing about. But we are thinking about potentially doing an X-File review show as well.
Yeah.
The more and more I think about it, I don't think I'd want to replace the Monte Zone, but maybe we try and get some other people on board and do something different with on a different night of the week or whatever to do an X-Files review show. But I think that would be cool, and that's certainly still a program that's getting a lot of interest from the younger generation, and being seen as very retro now, so it'd be maybe cool to do that for the channel.
I was thinking we could roll it into the Monte Zone and just have some, cover, like take it a few episodes at a time and just give a rough overview of what the episodes were about, what themes they covered, and then talk about those themes.
Yeah, after our initial discussion about it, though, my first thought went to, if it's going to be a review show with as many seasons as X-Files, which is like 11 seasons, right? And it's, I don't know, average season, I think, is somewhere between 18 and 20 episodes. You're going to need to do it on a weekly basis, right? Mm. And I don't think I could dedicate every single Friday. Yeah. So
that's why I have the Star Trek review show on a Wednesday.
Or it's whether, we were talking about the idea of doing one live Monte Zone a week and then 3 pre-recorded ones, whether we do the X-Files review show pre-recorded and have that on the 3 other weeks being played, and then we do a Monte Zone at the end. I don't know. We've got to talk about it. That's why I said it's a long way away. Yeah. It's not definite yet. It's something we're talking about. And it's that sort of thing that is what our community thread can be used for on YouTube. When we post stuff on there, you guys can share ideas of things that you'd like to see us do on the channel. If it comes to like my G-Star Vaults or story times, if there's anything that you would like me to cover, I've also got my next story time planned as well. And yeah, if there's anything you'd like us to do, put that in there, and then we can go about trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Thank you to everyone that's joined us this evening in live chat. Thank you to Mickey. Great to see you. Wookie, well done, sir, for staying all the way to the end. I know the Monte Zone, you're more of a TNG review guy, sort of thing. Maz, thank you for coming. My Star Trek review co-host. Tired Time Lord's even popped in. Hello, Tired Time Lord. He loves the Obi-Wan series. He's just watched it with his kid. Oh, wow. Well, sorry about that. My wrench, Smiler Rainbow, thank you for coming along.
And it was great to see Tavi pop along as well.
Tavi came along. Kevin, always here with the info and the questions, and it's great to see Kevin back. And yeah, thank you to Sean as well, my other co-host from the Star Trek Review Show. The full Star Trek Review Show gang were in live chat this evening, so that's really good. Let us know in the comments or in the community tab what you thought of this kind of Monte Zone, whether you'd like to see more of this kind of thing. I think we can definitely do this sort of thing. About other historical events,
we could
and the controversies around them.
We could investigate O.J. Simpson, and we could go through I've just been watching all the case on. Funny enough, I didn't watch it when it was actually happening, but the Depp and Johnny Depp and what's her face, the case, the lawsuit between those two, and the fact that I don't know when it happened 3 or 4 years ago, was making all the huge ripple through all the news and social media. I just completely kept away from it because I kind of already made my mind up within 5 seconds of seeing her talk. But I just watched a documentary all about that whole process. And
Amber Heard.
Amber Heard, yeah.
Dear.
Gosh. So there is a number of things that have happened throughout history that we could go into, investigate. We could do JFK, and we could present some of the other different theories of that. Huh?
I'm sure we did that. I don't know.
Well, we've obviously probably talked about it involved with other conspiracies.
Yeah, Titanic.
We did an episode of conspiracies, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think we mentioned a little bit about JFK there, but it'd be great to go into some of the detail.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is that a lot of these stuff is constantly, because again, sounds like a scratch record, but because technology advances, the analysis of what things that can be done, just gets better and better. So, there's more information and data being presented all the time. So it's well worth going back and looking at these things.
Hey, Wookie, Jesus Christ, real or mythical? Yeah.
That's really
the evidence for Jesus.
We'll get a load of haters coming on.
Yeah, so that's a good one. Right? Yeah.
Mickey says he watched some of the trial. Yeah.
It was funny. I did watch some of the trial. I mean, you had to. It was great comedy. It was great.
It was just, there's a lot of things that you don't even need to be a body language expert to just realize that, I don't think he's completely innocent of, he probably can be quite, quite an angry and an outspoken person behind closed doors and be scary. One of those people who throws things and things like that. But I wouldn't ever put him to, physically laying a hand on somebody. There's too many things in his life that just means that he wouldn't be like that. It would be very odd if he was like that. And then when you see her speak, all your questions are just answered straight away, because it's like, bitch, you acting right now, And
the fact that she was already convicted of domestic abuse.
And she she doesn't talk about the abuse in the way that somebody would talk about an abuse. It was like she was acting it out and creating a scene, like people who have been genuinely abused. It was like funny to hear that letter of that got written to her by the charity or company for domestic violence of women at the national company of the US, and wrote this letter to her saying, you've just done a massive amount of damage to people, women that struggle with domestic violence. So but it's just another example of a route that we could go down for content for the show. But I definitely think we'd do something a little bit more paranormal next time.
Yeah, maybe next time. All right. Well, yes. Thank you to everyone for coming along. Come and join us again for the Star Trek review show next Wednesday. I'm off on holiday now for 2 weeks, so I hope you all have a great summer. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Cheers.